01. After a period of darkness that lasted for an unknown amount of time, I opened my eyes, and what came into view was a mysterious room. It was like a scene from a sci-fi movie, with various instruments and many things directly connected to my body. My name is Lu Yuan, and I was just an ordinary office worker, but why did I become like this? What happened to me? Roar. I opened my mouth, and instead of asking, I let out a growl, like a beast roar. This is the sound I make? Wait. I finally noticed that my body was different, and when I raised my hands, I saw that my hands had lost their human appearance, but had become a pair of huge claws with rock-like surfaces. Roar. With doubts, I sat up abruptly, only to realize that not only my hands, but my whole body had become inhuman. Report: the test subject has awakened, the experiment was successful, the target has been resurrected from the dead, and General Lu Yuan. Al has been resurrected, said a person in a white coat, reporting to someone in the laboratory. Lu Yuan? Or should I say Lu Yuan Al, at the moment showed a puzzled expression. Is it him? But why can he understand this passage? The reason for this confusion is that this passage is obviously not a language on Earth. Even in Lu Yuan's mind, a memory inexplicably appeared. He finally knew that this place was no longer Earth, but a planet called Krypton, and he, Lu Yuan Al, was once the supreme commander of this planet. The Al family, that is, the family of Lu Yuan Al, is one of the few oldest families on Krypton, and it is also the light of hope for Krypton, and it has always held an important seat in the Krypton Council. In a battle not long ago, Lu Yuan Al died for some reason. Later, he was sent here somehow, and was secretly experimented by Kryptonian scientists, and he really opened his eyes again. It's just that the Lu Yuan of at the moment is no longer the original Lu Yuan, and the current Lu Yuan is a soul who has traveled through time. He didn't know why he would time travel and become the master of this body. Wait, Krypton? Does it sound familiar? Lu Yuan muttered in his heart. When I heard the name of Krypton, for some reason, I felt a familiar sense of déjà vu immediately afterwards. I heard the previous person say, yes, he may no longer be the respected general we are familiar with, so I named this plan the Doomsday Plan. Damn, Doomsday? Krypton? Doesn't that mean that this is DC? Lu Yuan finally understood. He finally understood why he felt familiar. Isn't this the story of DC? Krypton, Kryptonians, isn't that the home of Superman? And Doomsday? He turned out to be Doomsday? With the popularity of Superman, even those who are not familiar with American comics and superhero themes have heard of it to some extent, right? Doomsday once created such a big event as Superman's death. What's more, Lu Yuan is not a complete novice and has watched some super British movies. All of a sudden, he was dumbfounded. Not only did he time travel, but he also traveled to the DC world and even became a member of the Kryptonians. But why is he not Superman, but Doomsday? Lu Yuan almost cried without feeling wronged. As a result, this scene was misunderstood. Doomsday seems to be a little mentally unstable. It seems out of control. Please help. Hearing this, Lu Yuan was shocked. Could it be that he wanted to freeze himself? That's not good. He just crossed over. How could he be trapped immediately? Thinking of this, Lu Yuan began to fight. First, he easily broke free from the instruments on his body, and he found that his current strength was simply invincible. The unparalleled strength made Lu Yuan jump up easily and smash the glass in front of him with his shoulder. The Kryptonian scientist was taken aback. His legs gave way, and he fell to the ground, trembling as he looked at the terrifying beast in front of him that was easily over 3 meters tall. Lu Yuan stared at the guy in front of him condescendingly and said to himself, "Didn't it be you who created I? Why is he so scary instead?" Nor does he look in the mirror to see how horrible he is now. It has completely turned into a hideous monster. Its big mouth is covered with sharp fangs, and its body is covered with a layer of terrifying bone armor. There is a cold glow around it. The whole person is not so much a creature as a creature. A weapon of destruction was created. Is that why it was named Doomsday? He didn't hurt that person. Lu Yuan already knew that he was calling for reinforcements. The most urgent thing is to get out of here first, and then figure out his own situation. So Lu Yuan turned around and ran. He didn't know where the way out. Anyway, relying on his own strength, he just rushed out all the way. Sometimes he rushed out from the passage, and sometimes he smashed the facing wall. Even the defensive measures that this laboratory put down urgently were not worth mentioning in front of him. Finally, with a bang, the wall of the laboratory was smashed, and Lu Yuan rushed out. Falling on the street outside, Lu Yuan stood there but was a little dumbfounded. I saw that the surroundings were full of towering 100-story buildings, even higher. Spaceships can be seen everywhere in the sky, and even those near the ground are suspended vehicles, all of which are vehicles that can fly off the ground. There are also some pedestrians dressed in a sci-fi futuristic style everywhere. The sudden appearance of Lu Yuan also startled everyone around. At the same time, Lu Yuan also noticed that a fleet of spaceships were flying towards here in the distance, and some memories appeared in his mind. It was the guard team named Candor City. Maybe this was the person from before, the so-called support, right? Without thinking, Lu Yuan was about to turn around and run away. But suddenly, a clear and pleasant voice came from the sky. This is Alice Zod, the captain of the security team. Attention, the subject of the experiment. We have no malicious intentions. Please cooperate with our work. Lu Yuan was shocked. Alice Zod? She is exactly this body, Lu Yuan Al's childhood sweetheart. The two have known each other since childhood, not only went to the same school, but also joined the army together, and then Lu Yuan eventually became the supreme commander of the entire Kryptonian, while Alice became his adjutant, a respected woman, general. But why is Alice now returning to the hometown of the two, Candor City, and has become a small guard captain? The most important thing is that after hearing Alice's voice, Lu Yuan seemed to have taken root on the soles of his feet, and he didn't want to leave. He even roared subconsciously, "Alice, it's my Alice." 02. On the street, Lu Yuan just stood there, with his head held high, watching the fleet of spaceships flying rapidly from far to near but not leaving. Obviously, there was an alley not far behind him, even if he had first. Or maybe he knows that he has been locked. Even if he runs in, it will be futile, and he will still be blocked. Definitely the main reason is that he heard that voice. It was the childhood sweetheart of the original owner of this body, and when he heard this voice, he spontaneously stopped moving. As for Lu Yuan himself, he was very anxious, but he seemed to know in the dark that if he didn't see this side, the last side, he would not be able to truly gain control of this body. Then he is likely to be resisted, and in that case, Lu Yuan will miss this opportunity to cross. And God knows why he crossed over. If it was because of the truck, going back would be a dead end. So Lu Yuan can only stand there and let the original owner of this body fulfill his final wish, or last wish. Whoosh whoosh. Spaceships, 12 in total, hovered above Lu Yuan's head and were about to land around him. Those spaceships are not large aircraft carriers, but smaller ones, similar to individual combat spaceships. But there is also some room inside for someone who, in addition to the driver, is dedicated to controlling the weapons. Some weapons have already begun to aim at Lu Yuan. Alice's voice sounded again. Don't land in a hurry. The target may have resistance force. Be careful. Those spaceships quickly pulled up a little more. Lu Yuan didn't pay attention to these details and only focused on one of the spaceships. Through the transparent glass of the cockpit of the spacecraft, it can be seen that there is only one female pilot inside. It was a beautiful girl with blonde hair and beautiful facial features, especially a pair of big blue eyes, which were particularly attractive. She is very young. She doesn't look more than 18 or 19 years old. Who would have thought that such a young and beautiful girl would have reached the level of adjutant general before this? Even if placed in Candor City, the capital city of Krypton, that would be the highest level of general, but in Lu Yuan's eyes, she is just a girl, and even more his girl. Alice. A hoarse voice came from Lu Yuan's mouth, calling the name of the girl he was thinking of. From this moment, Lu Yuan integrated with the memory of this body. From the perspective of an observer, Lu Yuan watched the past experience of this body in an all-round way, and those memories and experiences gradually became his own memories. Later, he also began to show missing feelings from his eyes. Moreover, Lu Yuan also discovered that these two people are actually a pair of fateful Mandarin ducks. Both the Al family and the Zod family are the oldest families on Krypton, and the two families still have some grievances. For some reason, each generation of Al and Zod will have more or less entanglements. Sometimes it is caused by outsiders. For example, if two families like the same person, one of them will lose in the end, and thus they will become enemies. Sometimes it is also because of interest disputes or hatred, and so on. In short, the two families are feuding. However, the two families of this generation are a man and a woman. From the initial contest and tit-for-tat confrontation, the two gradually developed into happy enemies and lovers at one point. It's a pity that they encountered the strongest opposition and obstruction from the two major families, and they had to end up breaking up. But neither of them forgot each other. Even if this body has become what it is now, it is still staring at the girl in the sky obsessively. Even Lu Yuan is infected. Help me take care of her. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Lu Yuan's heart. I am Lu Yuan Al, the original owner of this body. I am already dead. Even if I do this experiment, I will not be resurrected. Even because of this, the experiment may lead to my total loss of control and runaway. No one can reverse death. Life is not played like this. This is blasphemy. But you are different. You are a new soul. Your infusion will revive this body. I can give you my body, but I only have one request, and that is to protect her instead of me. After listening to Lu Yuan Al's request, Lu Yuan immediately agreed without thinking about it. No problem, deal. Immediately afterwards, Lu Yuan began to regain control of this body, and this time he could feel that there was no hidden danger in his control of the body, and this body was finally his thing. In the next second, Lu Yuan turned around and ran away. It's a fool not to run. It was because of interference from the original owner of this body that Lu Yuan had to stand there stupidly before, but now he can finally act according to his own wishes. That idiot, even if he wants to recognize the other party, he can't do it in front of such a large crowd. Many things are inconvenient for such a large crowd. Anyway, knowing where Alice lives, wouldn't it be nice to sneak in at night? As expected, the top priority should be to get rid of the current predicament first. As if he didn't expect him to make such a sudden move, the spaceship in the sky didn't react, and it took a while to catch up quickly. Then the spacecraft stopped halfway through the flight. Someone raised a question and asked in the channel, "General Zod, Captain?" Alice regained her composure, but felt a little panicked in her heart. Is it him? Obviously that person looked like a monster, and obviously the voice was different, but Alice seemed to hear that person's voice inexplicably. Is it Lu Yuan? Alice's eyes became hot, and she almost shed tears. Inadvertently, Alice's thoughts went back to a year ago. A year ago, when the matter between Lu Yuan and Alice had to fall through due to the strong resistance of the two families, Krypton clashed with its neighbor Dakosum in the same fixed star system. Dakosum and Krypton are in a fixed star system. The two civilizations are more like brothers, but the actual relationship is not very friendly. At that time, Lu Yuan personally led the army to fight against the enemy as the supreme commander. Although he won that battle and almost disintegrated all the military power of Dakosum Star, he did not dare to let Dakosum Star sneak into the ground in one fell swoop, nor did he power threatens Krypton again. But at the last moment, a remnant Dakosum Star team attacked Lu Yuan's troops who had let down their vigilance because of the victory. Alice, who was the adjutant at the time, bore the brunt. It was Lu Yuan who blocked the fatal attack for Alice at the last moment, but in the end it was Lu Yuan who paid the price with his life. Later, Alice couldn't bear the blow and chose to retire and return to the hometown of the two, the city of Candor, where the two grew up together and left countless memories, willing to become a member of the security team. But she didn't expect that she seemed to find a clue about him here today. I won't let you go. 03. I will never let you leave me again. With this belief, Alice drove her spaceship, gritted her teeth, and quickly chased after it. The security team was stunned again, and someone muttered, "The captain is speeding. Do you still care about this now? What should we do?" Chase. But the captain and that monster are gone. In just a blink of an eye, not only did Alice, who was running at full speed, disappear into the distance, but even Lu Yuan disappeared when they were distracted. A certain block in the distance, this is one of the few remote areas in Candor City. At the moment, a big man broke into here suddenly. It was Lu Yuan who escaped here. After fleeing wildly along the way, Lu Yuan has gradually adapted to his own situation. He found that he is not only strong, but also not slow. He felt that he might have exceeded the normal speed of sound now. That is to say, even the sound will be surpassed by him, and the sonic boom left when he broke through the sound barrier will be heard after he leaves a long distance. It was scary and exciting for Lu Yuan, something he had never experienced before. Only when he stopped at the end of the block, before he had time to catch his breath. There was also a tearing air sound from the sky above his head, and a single combat spaceship rushed straight at him. Lu Yuan hurriedly turned around and jumped to the side of the street, looking extremely embarrassed. Raising his head, Lu Yuan cursed, "You crazy girl, do you want to kill me?" This is completely his subconscious reaction and words. It really is you. B************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************่Aren't you dead? The spaceship stopped not far in front. Alice opened the hatch and got out. Standing there, looking at the figure of Lu Yuan getting up from the ground, she finally couldn't hold it anymore and asked tearfully, "Is it hurting?" Lu Yuan was speechless. Who did he fall for? But when he saw Alice, who was rarely showing softness, he couldn't speak. The two just looked at each other across the air, with moving emotions in their eyes, and the past and memories of the two were quickly flashing in their hearts. Finally, they moved almost simultaneously. Lu Yuan strode forward, and Alice also jumped off the spaceship and rushed towards Lu Yuan. Finally, they embraced each other. That memory finally became Lu Yuan's. He not only occupied this body, but also inherited all the memories of this body, as if Lu Yuan Al was originally his life, and his own memory was his previous life. It's as if he suddenly awakened the memory of his previous life. He is Lu Yuan, also Lu Yuan Al. What exactly is going on? Alice in her arms raised her head. Although Lu Yuan has now turned into a hideous monster Doomsday, she didn't have any dislike or fear. Instead, she asked with concern, "Aren't you dead? Or with my own eyes? See, you died to save me, but why did you suddenly come back to life? And you didn't look for me after you were alive?" At the end, there was a dissatisfied expression in Alice's eyes. This is why women are unreasonable. Why did you come to support here before? And why did you pursue Lu Yuan? Didn't he just wake up? Lu Yuan rolled his eyes, but still explained, "I don't know what happened. I just woke up. What about you? How did you recognize me? What do you think? We've known each other since childhood. Do you think I won't recognize you? Even if you turn into ashes, I will still know you," Alice said forcefully. But the meaning in it warmed Lu Yuan's heart. Even being able to recognize this shows how important and significant Lu Yuan occupies in Alice's heart. This also made Lu Yuan inexplicably sour, because he knew that it was the mark of Lu Yuan Al. The only thing that made him feel gratified was that the two of them had only reached the point where they were in love, and their relationship was pure, but they hadn't crossed that level yet. That layer of window paper is still there. At most they just hold hands, or carry others behind their backs. After all, the relationship between the two families is their biggest obstacle, and there is nothing they can do about it. Unless the two become the patriarchs of their respective families, even if they have already stood in such a high position, they will be controlled by the elders of the family. That damn Presbyterian mode. So, Alice is still intact. Well done, myself. Always feel like you're thinking about something very disrespectful? Alice in her arms reached out and pushed Lu Yuan's terrible chest muscles and broke free, standing in front of Lu Yuan with strange eyes. Lu Yuan spread his hands. "Is it your illusion? Or is it because I'm ugly now that you despise me? Could this be your excuse for breaking up?" Alice narrowed her eyes slightly and reminded, "You were the one who said we should break up." Lu Yuan was speechless for a moment. The two looked at each other for a while, and Alice approached Lu Yuan again, reaching out to touch Lu Yuan's skin carefully. "Why did you become like this? Can you change back?" She was very concerned about the influence of Lu Yuan's appearance. Lu Yuan carefully covered the back of Alice's hand and shook his head. "I'm fine. Apart from being a bit uglier, he is in no better condition than he is now. After becoming Doomsday, his strength, physical fitness, and speed are all far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Even if this is Krypton, Kryptonians have a chance to become Superman. But the Kryptonians in their hometown are just ordinary people. One is that kryptonite is everywhere on Krypton, including the air. In addition, the fixed star of the fixed star system where Krypton is located has a red light, which makes Kryptonians just ordinary people. But Lu Yuan, who has become Doomsday, is different. He began to show the power of Superman. Although he is still far from the real Superman, at least he can't fly now, and he hasn't tried whether he already has the super abilities of Superman. But don't forget, he was also a Kryptonian before. In theory, if Superman knows it, he should also know it. Now we just need to find a chance to bask in the yellow sun's rays, right? Lu Yuan recalled the setting of DC. The power of the Kryptonians comes from the yellow sun's rays, and their own red fixed star will only weaken Superman's strength, but it seems to have no effect on Doomsday. What did you say? Alice didn't catch his whisper. Lu Yuan shook his head and looked back. It's nothing. I'm just a little worried about what to do next. Why don't you go to your place first? Rogue. Huh. I just said to hide at your place first. What do you think? 04. On the roof of a high-rise building in Kansas City, in a not-so-spacious room, Lu Yuan sat on the floor, leaning against a collapsed sofa behind him, looking up at the furnishings and decorations in the room. After a while, wearing a thin bathrobe, Alice came out barefoot while wiping her hair, went straight to the refrigerator, and then returned to Lu Yuan with 2 bottles of cold beer in one hand. Lu Yuan was a little surprised. Why is there beer in your house? He remembered that Alice used to not drink, not a drop of alcohol. Alice froze for a moment, then shrugged generously and said nonchalantly, I drank it because I missed you and couldn't sleep. She said it lightly, but Lu Yuan was clear and moved in his heart, knowing that Alice misses her dead self and misses her sickly, and probably often suffers from insomnia. that's why she can't sleep and has to drink to drown her sorrows. But when I thought about it again, did people really think about me? He began to struggle with it again, and couldn't help but take Alice's hand and let her sit beside him. Alice glanced at the sofa behind Lu Yuan and sighed. You can sleep on the floor tonight. I don't want to change all the furniture at home. Lu Yuan lost interest in an instant. At first he thought about it, but now, alas. Alice secretly laughed. What is the relationship between them? It was a relationship from childhood to adulthood, then from love to breakup, and from yin and yang to reunion. She looked at Lu Yuan's huge body now, and couldn't help shaking her head. Big brother, I can't take it. The two lived in peace like this, drank a few bottles of wine, talked about some interesting things from the past, and then went asleep. Alice naturally returned to the bedroom by herself, while Lu Yuan could only sleep on the floor in the living room. As a result, when his huge body turned over at night, it still shattered Alice's last coffee table. He just turned over and shattered it with a slap. Alice doesn't care. Anyway, the Al family has a big business, and the Zod family is not short of money, so it doesn't matter. But in the middle of the night, the two were awakened by a rapid knock on the door. A pursuer? Lu Yuan sat up, and from his bewildered eyes, two terrifying rays shot out, piercing the floor in an instant. Alice happened to see this scene when she came out, and couldn't help being taken aback. Even Lu Yuan was taken aback, as if he had inadvertently activated Superman's retinasers, also known as heat vision rays. In fact, Superman's heat ray is not a laser or cyclops, but the power accumulated by the sun's rays absorbed on weekdays, and then released through the eyes. So Superman's heat ray actually only has thermal energy, but the temperature is strong enough to destroy almost all substances. The two did not talk, only communicated tacitly with their eyes. Lu Yuan asked Alice with his eyes, "What should I do?" Alice waved her head to signal him. "You go into the house and hide, and I'll open the door." Lu Yuan hurriedly got up from the ground, then passed Alice and hid in her boudoir. Alice adjusted her pajamas and went to open the door. The door opened, and there was a team of guards outside the door, which was still the team she was familiar with. That is, the team that acted together with her to catch Lu Yuan today. Could it be that he really came to track down Lu Yuan? Alice secretly became vigilant, but asked calmly on the surface, "What's the matter? Is there something going on so late?" The person in front of him was first impressed by Alice's elegant home attire, but the other person said, "Captain, it's an emergency. There is an early warning that an alien spaceship is coming to Krypton, and the target is Kandor City." Alice was startled, and when she was about to take action, she remembered something and said, "Isn't General Lucy of the Al family in charge of the army now? What does it have to do with me?" Someone took out a phone-like thing and handed it over, and a virtual three-dimensional image immediately popped up on it. It was a beautiful girl with black hair. "Sister-in-law, you blocked me again, right? I asked them to notify you. You also know that I am still young and not competent enough. Come and help me. And even if you resent our family, I will support you. It's with my brother, so you can't leave me alone, right? Even if you are angry, you shouldn't be angry with me, right?" The girl on the opposite side shouted familiarly as soon as she opened her mouth, calling her sister-in-law directly. It turned out that she was Lucy Al, the younger sister of Lu Yuan Al. Since Lu Yuan's death, Lucy has taken over the position of Kandor City General, which should have belonged to Alice, but she chose to retire by herself. In fact, the army of Kandor City has always been in the hands of only two families, the Al family and the Zod family alternately. In fact, Kandor City was originally the territory of the Al family, but later, as Krypton transformed from a feudal society to a democratic society, the House of Elders, or the House of Representatives, replaced the position similar to the king, allowing the Zod family to take advantage of the void. In fact, as early as 150,000 years ago, it is said that the theocratic power of Krypton replaced the royal family to control all things on Krypton, and the city of Kandor has existed since 150,000 years ago. And the original god, Rio, the god of Krypton, is the ancestor of the current Al family. Rueo is known as the god of hope and the sun, and the Al family is the descendant of Rueo, and the family crest S of the Al family represents hope. Faced with Lucy, it was just a lot of words and the familiar way of addressing. Alice didn't have the same thing. Sighing lightly, Alice said, "Okay, I'll go right away after changing clothes. Also, why did you send so many people over? If it's just to find her, there's no need for so many people to come, right? Or is it that Lu Yuan has been exposed?" "I don't know about that." Lucy shrugged and hung up the communicator. As for the team members in front of them, some people frequently looked into the room, obviously looking for something. Alice knew in her heart that they still knew something. For example, The monster disappeared after the last encounter with her. What's the matter? Alice didn't feel guilty at all. She closed the door with her backhand, leaving only a crack in the door, and said bluntly, "If you have nothing to do, please go back. You also know what I have next important matter." Only then did those people leave in embarrassment. Alice shook her head. It seemed that her team members were not idiots either, and it will only become more and more troublesome to keep Lu Yuan in the future. Thinking about the distressed situation, after seeing off the team members, Alice turned around and entered the room to change clothes and prepare to go to Lucy's war room. During this period, Lu Yuan kept asking Alice behind her without realizing it. Alice took the trouble and simply threw the pajamas on his face and just started changing clothes. It's almost like a married couple. 05. Alice left anyway, put on a neat and heroic military uniform, drove her spaceship, and headed straight for the army. Lu Yuan didn't accompany him, and he wasn't worried. When he was the Supreme Marshal, he often dealt with aliens. Krypton is already one of the super civilizations of the level universe, and even before that, it once proposed a plan to expand the universe to supercolonize the entire universe. Naturally, dealing with many other alien civilizations is indispensable. In particular, one of them is called the Green Lantern Corps, a force that claims to be the first legion in the universe, and they don't even know each other. From the beginning of hostility to the later consensus, they have allied with a group of blue eternal life called the Asgardian universe. Krypton is definitely not the kind of weak civilization that is bullied by others. On the contrary, it is better to say that Krypton does not bully others. And the most important thing is that in the past, Alice only worked as a military consultant. She only needs to help Lucy formulate a strategy and wait and see whether this sudden alien civilization is an enemy and how to deal with it. It's just a question of how to deal with it. Who would have thought that a major event would happen here? Alice left, leaving Lu Yuan alone at her childhood sweetheart's house. Now they are still in a state of breaking up and have not yet reunited. But that's just a matter of words. But Lu Yuan has a bit of a grudge. After all, he is him, and Lu Yuan Al is Lu Yuan Al. He knew even better that the person Alice really liked in her heart was the original Lu Yuan Al, not the current him. He was more like a thief, an outsider who stole this body and its memory, nothing more. So can he still take advantage of it? I just integrated the memory, and it turned out that that memory has become my life. Lu Yuan smiled wryly. Now he seems to have suddenly awakened the memory of his previous life, as if Lu Yuan Al is actually another part of his life. From this point of view, those memories with Alice are his life. In short, he was very entangled, and couldn't help but raised his big hand and scratched his head, causing a burst of sparks splashing and the sound of clicking, as if he was not scratching his head, but a piece of steel. Maybe his body is already man of steel. While Lu Yuan was still struggling with this, suddenly, the whole room shook. What? Lu Yuan hurriedly stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. I saw a huge amount of space carrier appearing above Kandor City, and it has broken through the atmosphere of Krypton and came to a place above the city that is visible to the naked eye. And the shock just now was caused by something jumping out of the space carrier. It was caused by a big guy landing on the ground, and it almost affected the entire city of Kandor. Lu Yuan was stunned. Even he was surprised what kind of creature it was. At this moment, countless spaceships flew out of Kandor to meet them, and a great battle began. As a bystander, Lu Yuan didn't know what happened, so he agreed to communicate. In short, he only saw that when the Kryptonian spacecraft in Kandor City was about to approach the opponent, the unknown space carrier took the lead in attacking, and a terrifying energy shell was released, which immediately caught Krypton by surprise. But Krypton is not completely defenseless. Those Kryptonian ships that survived immediately counterattacked, and the two sides exchanged fire. And this is Krypton's home court, and the combat power of Kandor City must not be underestimated. Krypton's space aircraft carriers began to appear in the sky, and spaceships full of futuristic styles went to the battlefield, attacking the enemy from the air. The battle started inexplicably, and immediately entered a white-hot stage. The two sides fought fiercely, and it also affected the city of Kandor below. Countless Kryptonians on the street fled in panic, especially in the middle of the city, where stood a terrifying figure. He was the one who caused the shock in Kandor before, and the place where he landed was created a deep hole, but he was unscathed. Even at the moment, he was still holding up a huge amount of a weapon like a halberd in his hand, and slammed it hard on the ground in front of him. Boom. The entire Kandor City shook again, and even in that street, centered on that person, the surrounding ground surged up, burning and leaving a circle of traces. Lu Yuan couldn't help becoming anxious when he saw this place. He had already begun to feel a sense of belonging to Krypton, thinking that this was his home planet. Definitely, he has not forgotten his life and memories on Earth. Now that Krypton has encountered an enemy, it is natural not to sit idly by. At the same time, a ray of light suddenly lit up in the room, and Alice's virtual figure appeared inside. Lu Yuan, we need your help, Alice said anxiously. The enemy still has follow-up troops, and they are about to break through the Kryptonian atmosphere. Now only you can lead us to defeat the enemy. It seemed that this group of enemies was very powerful, and even Alice panicked. Lu Yuan also saw with his own eyes that more than half of Krypton's initial army was wiped out by a round of firepower. Even if many aircraft carrier-class spaceships are sent out now, they still cannot wipe out the enemy immediately. Even more enemy fleets reappeared from outer space, heading straight for Kandor with terrifying momentum. Krypton has already reacted, but it will take time to send support from other cities. Alice had to turn to Lu Yuan for help. Lu Yuan was once the supreme commander of Krypton, and his ability is naturally beyond doubt. Lu Yuan was also straightforward and agreed. I'll go right away. Both he and Alice were born in Kandor City and had served here, so they are naturally familiar with the location of the army headquarters. But Alice said, I've already sent a spaceship to pick you up and I'll be there soon. It turned out that Alice just informed Lu Yuan that she was already halfway there, and she also knew that Lu Yuan would not refuse, and he would definitely take the responsibility. Lu Yuan really did not disappoint her. However, in order to bring Lu Yuan to the headquarters as soon as possible, Alice happened to pass by the sky above that terrifying creature. Not only that, she also flew into the enemy's attack range. A shell was meant to be aimed at another Kryptonian ship, but somehow ended up heading straight for Alice. Alice had already made evasive actions, but the shell still grazed the edge of the spaceship, immediately causing the spaceship to lose control and fall to the ground. Do not. Seeing this scene, Lu Yuan's eyes were about to split open. He let out a roar and subconsciously jumped out of the window. At this moment, how can he care about the things he thought before? Alice must be fine. Maybe it was because he cared too much about Alice, and all his attention was focused on the spaceship that fell from the sky. Plus, Lu Yuan now only thought about catching the spaceship. Lu Yuan didn't realize that since he jumped out of the window, he had been stuck in midair and flew over at such a fast speed. 06. Suddenly another monster appeared in midair. Why do you say again? Because isn't there already one on the ground? And when Lu Yuan suddenly appeared, the monster on the ground raised his head in response, watching Lu Yuan quickly fly towards a falling spaceship with a thoughtful expression on his rough face. Lord of Darkness, we are ready. At this time, a spaceship landed behind the monster, and 3 aliens who looked exactly the same came down, and 3 square boxes were floating behind them. The monster who became the Lord of Darkness said without looking back, Then let's start and transform this place into our world. Yes. The 3 aliens who looked the same started to move. They turned around and put the square boxes in a row, and then planned to synthesize them into one. In fact, this Lord of Darkness is the notorious Darkseid, but he may not yet have mastered the power of the Omega effect, which is his most well-known Omega Ray. This makes Darkseid not as powerful as the future, but he's also strong enough to start conquering world after world, and he does. Especially those 3 square boxes, which are high-tech products built with the technology of apocalypse stars, are called mother boxes. A single mother box already has almost infinite energy. Once they are allowed to integrate the 3 mother boxes into one, the power of the Trinity is even enough to change the environment of the entire planet. Darkseid is not only to conquer one world after another, he also wants to turn the conquered world into an environment like the apocalypse star. The apocalypse star is also known as the hell that exists in reality, or it is called a place more terrifying than hell. Once he succeeds, Krypton is hopeless and everyone will die. Perhaps the only consolation is that there are no demon-like figures in Darkseid's army at the moment. Demon-like, that is the largest army under Darkseid, although the individual strength is not very strong, but it is easier to manufacture. The most important thing is that the demon is a biochemical weapon made with motherbox technology, and it is even more loyal to Darkseid, and it is very convenient to use. Lu Yuan doesn't know this yet, because he only has Alice in distress in his eyes. Alice, Lu Yuan shouted. His huge body crossed the entire battlefield, heading straight for Alice's spaceship. Finally, he arrived before Alice's spaceship was about to crash, and hurriedly reached out and grabbed the edge of the spaceship. Crack. The spaceship made a crisp sound, and even the armor made of solid materials was almost crushed by Lu Yuan. Or maybe it was because the previous shell had destroyed the armor system. But in the next second, an invisible force suddenly emanated from Lu Yuan's body, surrounding the entire spaceship. In this way, he can spread the power throughout the entire body of the spaceship without tearing the spaceship apart like chopsticks stabbing tofu. In the spaceship, Alice did not lose consciousness and noticed Lu Yuan, who was pasted in front of the cockpit of the spaceship, and subconsciously called out, "What monster?" Lu Yuan looked at Alice strangely. The latter also belatedly recognized that this was his childhood sweetheart and lover, and explained awkwardly, "Your big face is too big. I couldn't see it clearly. Don't explain. The more you talk, the more it will go too far." Lu Yuan rolled his eyes, then turned his head around to find a building with a flat roof, and flew over with the spaceship in his hands. After finding a place to stay, Lu Yuan freed his hand to help Alice open the hatch. The armor and power system of the spaceship were severely damaged to the point of being completely unusable. After Alice climbed out, Lu Yuan kicked the spaceship away. Just when Alice showed a puzzled look, the spaceship exploded into a ball of sparks in the distant sky. Empress Alice was terrified. If Lu Yuan hadn't arrived in time, she would have been killed in the bombing even if she hadn't crashed. "By the way, how can you fly?" Alice turned her head to look at Lu Yuan beside her again, showing surprise. But Lu Yuan at the moment has already looked into the distance. There, Darkseid was also watching Lu Yuan and Alice. Lu Yuan has seen Darkseid before, and has long recognized the most famous big boss in the DC world. Just as famous as Thanos in the Marvel Universe, Darkseid's status in the DC Universe even surpasses Thanos in the Marvel Universe. Even Darkseid is the prototype of Thanos. Even the settings of the new Protoss and the Eternals have many similarities. It is impossible for Lu Yuan not to know Darkseid, including the 3 mother boxes. He also knows a little bit. He's dangerous. Alice followed Lu Yuan's gaze, expressing her feelings when she noticed Darkseid's existence. Even if he just looked at Darkseid from afar, he could feel the horror of this tyrant. But Lu Yuan did not back down, but said to Alice, "Those 3 things are called mother boxes. If they are allowed to complete the integration of the Trinity on the surface of Krypton, the entire Krypton will perish immediately. So I will stop them." Alice was shocked, not only shocked by the powerful power of the mother box, but also asked Lu Yuan in surprise, "You mean yourself? Wait a minute. Although you were the supreme commander before, you are the wise general who strategizes and controls the overall situation. I can't even beat it." Alice was right. The former Lu Yuan was indeed not a general who took the lead in killing the enemy, but the supreme commander and commander. Is it really okay for Lovely to reveal her faults face to face? Lu Yuan was speechless to this childhood sweetheart. He raised his big hand and patted his chest, making a bang-bang sound, reminding, "Don't forget that I am not what I used to be. Besides, our army has not discovered the threat on the ground yet. And the enemy has more troops. I need you to help Lucy. That girl is not enough to take on this big task." He also wanted to take a team of soldiers to stop Darkseid, but he knew better that Kryptonians would only become powerful steel bodies, that is, Superman, after being baptized by the yellow sun's rays. But this is Krypton, and the fixed star here is a red giant star that has entered its twilight years, including the ubiquitous kryptonite on Krypton, which is the deadliest toxin for Kryptonians. The Kryptonians here are no different from the people on Earth. They are just the most ordinary physique. As for why Lu Yuan is different, let's not forget that he is no longer an ordinary Kryptonian, but has become Doomsday. Even though he still retains those Kryptonian qualities, he seems to be starting to be immune to those things that are mortal threats to Kryptonians. Even Lu Yuan could feel that his body was rapidly adapting to the environment. Not only did the kryptonite elements in the air begin to have no effect on him, even the red fixed star light above his head began to become his strength. So Lu Yuan said confidently, "Now, only I can stop him." 07. Both Lu Yuan and Alice are not ordinary people, and they can be regarded as respectable and powerful people on Krypton. And when they obtain the corresponding status, power, and privileges, they naturally also have corresponding responsibilities. So Alice didn't continue to act like a little girl. After taking another deep look at Lu Yuan, she turned around resolutely and walked to the other side. Taking out the communicator, Alice called a nearby spaceship to take her back to help the current General of Candor, Lucial. "Don't die again. Be ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************�e "And I can't marry you," Alice gritted her teeth. "We'll get married when you come back, and then find a place where the family can't find out and live the life we want. This flag stands." Lu Yuan smiled wryly and shook his head, but this is really desirable. After he really lived that kind of life, he must make Alice truly fall in love with himself. Gone. Whoosh. Lu Yuan didn't delay any longer, just touched the ground under his feet and rushed out. Alice resisted, not looking back, and when a spaceship quickly approached her, she boarded it. They all have their own missions, and they must also guard Krypton. This is their responsibility and mission, and they are willing to do it spontaneously. On the other side, Lu Yuan fixed his eyes on Darkseid, and Darkseid also noticed his actions. Shwa. Darkseid flicked the halberd in Lu Yuan's direction. In an instant, the spaceship above Darkseid's head shifted the turret and immediately launched a volley of bullets. A cloud of energy shells formed a barrage and poured out on Lu Yuan like a barrage. Startled, Lu Yuan was hit head-on by a shell first. Immediately afterwards, terrifying energy shells bombarded him one after another, and the sky burst into brilliant fireworks. The energy cannonballs continued, and there was a tendency to refuse to stop until Lu Yuan was smashed into pieces. However, from the center of the concentrated firepower of the energy shells, a huge body reappeared, and it still stood up to the firepower and started up again. "Damn it, it hurts," Lu Yuan yelled. He was taken aback at first, but apart from the fact that the first shell did cause him a little damage, he suddenly found that he would soon be immune to the enemy. The firepower attacked. He is Doomsday after all, and the most buggy thing about Doomsday is that Doomsday is immortal, and whenever Doomsday takes damage or dies, he will be immune to the previous damage after he comes back to life again. The same attack cannot cause a second damage to Doomsday. However, Doomsday is an immortal existence. He can be resurrected infinitely, and even has infinite physical strength. Why did Lu Yuan dare to rush to the enemy army alone? He has already recognized Darkseid, but he is not afraid? This is his confidence. He is Doomsday. Go to hell. Roaring, Lu Yuan stood up to the enemy's fire so hard, and rushed all the way to Darkseid's spaceship. He raised his hands above his head, clenched them tightly, and smashed hard at the spaceship in front of him. Boom. A mothership-class spaceship wailed. Explosions began to occur everywhere, and it fell down. Lu Yuan smashed a mothership by himself? This scene was too shocking. Even Darkseid squinted his eyes slightly, which he couldn't do. After all, he hasn't got the power of the Omega effect yet, let alone the anti-life equation. In fact, according to human values, the current Darkseid may not be 5 years old. The reason is that Darkseid is already a new Protoss, and the lifespan of gods is generally considered to be eternal and immortal. They can easily live for tens of thousands, or even tens of millions of years. So he is still very young. Definitely, this youth is already unimaginable for Lu Yuan. So he will not hesitate because the other party is 8 years old. After destroying one of Darkseid's spaceships with a single punch, the firepower finally came to an end. Not entirely because he was awed by Lu Yuan's terrifying power, but also because he was too close to Darkseid. When hitting him, it was inevitable to consider the situation that might affect Darkseid. "You are Darkseid?" Lu Yuan slowly flew over, and finally landed on the opposite side of Darkseid. Darkseid was a little puzzled. "You know me? I heard that you are a villain who does all kinds of evil," Lu Yuan said unceremoniously. He is not afraid of angering the other party at all. It is better to say that they are now invading Krypton in an all-round way, and even intend to make the Kryptonian civilization extinct. The two sides have long been dead. Afraid of offending the other party? Doesn't he know that what they have done has angered him? There was undisguised anger and hostility in Lu Yuan's eyes. I heard Darkseid say indifferently, "This world is like this, where the weak prey on the strong. Since I am stronger than all of you, it is natural that I should rule all life and civilization, and everyone must be in front of Darkseid. Kneel down, everyone must be loyal to Darkseid, and no one can resist Darkseid's will. Don't be ashamed, go to hell with me." Lu Yuan didn't want to listen to him talking nonsense anymore. His eyes widened, and he suddenly released a pair of terrifying red lasers, which were his hot eyes. As mentioned earlier, Darkseid at the moment has not yet obtained the power of the Omega effect, so he was taken aback on the spot and could barely hide aside. But he avoided it. But behind him stood 3 subordinates who were trying their best to combine the 3 mother boxes into one. One of them felt a wave of heat coming towards his face, and then he lost consciousness. His whole body limp and turned into a puddle of muddy water, and his whole body was vaporized into a puddle of meat. This is the power of heat ray. In fact, those 3 people should be the new Protoss brought by Darkseid from Apocalypse, but even ordinary new Protoss cannot resist heat ray. Unless it is the best among them, only those powerful new Protoss can hold on. And as one of the 3 people died, the 3 mother boxes that were integrating were separated again immediately. If they want to synthesize the mother box into one, They need to restart the previous work, and 2 people are more troublesome than 3 people. In fact, Lu Yuan's goal was the 3 of them from the beginning, right? He has been paying attention, and he has always been clear in his heart that the mother box must not be integrated. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. He could face Darkseid more calmly. 08. Lu Yuan and Darkseid, 2 behemoths. Neither of them can be called good-looking. It is better to say that both of them are monsters in the eyes of ordinary people. At the moment, they stood face to face on both sides. And the situation of the 2 people is also very similar. Darkseid is in an incomplete state, and even more of a child, who has not even obtained his most famous power. And Lu Yuan has just been resurrected in the state of Doomsday, and has not had time to absorb and grow to the strongest state. But they are also strong enough. Just standing there, no one dares to approach them. Even Darkseid's subordinates, who were only 2 left, silently swallowed their saliva, not only did not dare to mention revenge, but also quietly retreated into the distance. They just looked at each other like that, and they didn't know how good their friendship was. But at the next moment, the 2 acted in tacit understanding at the same time. Darkseid raised the halberd in his hand, raised it high, and smashed it down hard. Boom. The ground was shaking, and a terrible crack opened on the street, and it quickly spread towards Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan snorted coldly, and flew up into the air with both feet off the ground, and then went straight to Darkseid, yelling loudly, "Don't let me wantonly destroy it. This is someone else's hometown." Kandor City is the headquarters of the Al family and the Zod family, and Lu Yuan Al was born and raised here. Lu Yuan was already mad with rage for daring to cause such a large amount of damage to Kandor City in front of him. He flew in front of Darkseid in an instant, waved huge amounts of fists, and smashed it. When Cakeside wasn't easy to provoke either. He immediately raised his halberd in front of him, blocking Lu Yuan's fist with the solid body of the gun. The 2 fought like this. Neither of them showed incredible power. Maybe they didn't have more power now. But the more primitive the fighting style is, the more ferocious it will be. They began to attack each other with fists to the flesh, and tacitly agreed not to defend. Unless Darkseid pierced Lu Yuan's body with the tip of the halberd, he would not hide. I only heard the sound of boom, boom, sounded one after another, which was caused by the attacks they hit each other on each other. It sounded terrible, like a bolt from the blue. This force is enough to knock down a building easily, but when placed on them, it seems that their attacks are not harmful to each other. Darkseid is Darkseid after all, and Lu Yuan's ability to resist as Doomsday is beyond doubt. Doomsday, that is an existence that even the power of the Omega effect may not be able to kill, and as long as it is endured once, it will be immune, which is a bug. In the end, no matter whether Darkseid used his fist or the spear of the halberd, he could not harm Lu Yuan. But Lu Yuan also found that if he just used his fists, it seemed that he couldn't defeat Darkseid in a short time. After all, it was Darkseid. Then, come and taste this. A huge amount of bone spur suddenly stood up from Lu Yuan's elbow. It was a piece of bone armor covering his body, but at the moment Lu Yuan used it as a weapon, yes, go up to Darkseid. Darkseid only felt a cold light coming towards him, and his whole body shivered, having a bad premonition. He knew in his heart that he couldn't take this move by force, he had to deal with it. So he repeated his tricks again, waving his long halberd to meet him. But this time, the halberd failed to block Lu Yuan's attack smoothly, and only heard a crisp, click sound, and the edge of Lu Yuan's bone armor cut the halberd in two sharply. Darkseid didn't expect such a situation to happen. He was caught off guard, and with a sound of pest, Lu Yuan finally found the opportunity to leave a bloody hole in his chest. What? Darkseid raised his head and roared angrily. This was one of the few, perhaps the first time he suffered such trauma, and it was a shame for him. But the more shameful thing is yet to come. Lu Yuan was taken aback for a moment. Obviously, he didn't expect to succeed in one fell swoop, but he immediately reacted and pressed Darkseid to the ground on the spot. Boom. The two big guys collapsed with a crash. Lu Yuan was on top, standing on Darkseid's body with his legs outstretched, silently raised his fist. Go to hell with me. While drinking loudly, Lu Yuan clenched his fists with both hands, aiming at Darkseid's chest and began to punch quickly. Boom, boom, boom. As Lu Yuan quickly punched Darkseid one after another, the ground began to tremble again. As if an earthquake was about to occur, Darkseid was so beaten that he had no power to fight back. Originally, they were evenly matched, but Lu Yuan cheated the most because he had endless physical strength as Doomsday. Darkseid doesn't have this ability, so sooner or later he will fall into the disadvantaged, which is inevitable. Boom, 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 boom. Lu Yuan's attack was still going on. Seeing that Darkseid was finally going to reach his limit, he couldn't bear it anymore, and he was about to lose consciousness. Finally, his subordinates discovered Darkseid's distress situation, and immediately someone attacked from the sky, holding a huge axe and standing on Lu Yuan's back neck. Even if Lu Yuan was attacked suddenly, he couldn't stand still. He was knocked down to the ground immediately. Even half of his neck was split open, revealing terrible wounds, and his head was almost cut off. But a shocking scene happened. Lu Yuan was lying in a pool of blood, but his wound was healing spontaneously. In less than 3 seconds, his wound was intact. Lu Yuan stood up again. Not only was he intact, he was even immune to the attack just now. If it happened again, he would not be harmed. Definitely, if the other party had hacked elsewhere, maybe he would still be injured? Steppenwolf? It was his uncle who came to rescue Darkseid, and one of his subordinates, Steppenwolf. Dear Darkseid, this is a powerful enemy that cannot be underestimated, and you are injured. Please leave first, and I will finish it off. Steppenwolf landed in front of Darkseid, and when he saw clearly the tragedy of Darkseid at the moment, he couldn't help but twitch his eyes. I saw Darkseid's chest was crushed by Lu Yuan forcibly. That was Darkseid. After Zonos, Yugakon, he was the strongest new Protoss on Apocalypse. Even he ended up in such a miserable end. Can he stop him? Steppenwolf began to have doubts. At this time, Lu Yuan had already stood up again. Let's go? Don't even try to escape. This time, even Darkseid showed a fearful expression. They were evenly matched at first, but now even Darkseid had to admit that he was no match for the opponent. Suddenly, Steppenwolf pointed to the distance with his hand. You should take a look there. I admit that you are very strong, but you also have weaknesses. Lu Yuan looked up subconsciously and couldn't help but be taken aback, only to see that the spaceship at the moment that Alice was on was somehow surrounded by Darkseid's army. It turns out that Darkseid has noticed that Alice is the person Lu Yuan cares about the most. As long as Alice is caught, won't Lu Yuan be able to make Lu Yuan obediently submit? 09. It turned out that Darkseid still noticed Alice, and he witnessed with his own eyes how much Lu Yuan cared and rushed to rescue Alice. So Darkseid had his subordinates lock Alice at some point, and now her spaceship was surrounded by enemies. When Lu Yuan saw this scene, his eyes almost split open. Why didn't that stupid woman ask for help? Alice could have called for help, but she didn't. She already knew how important the task Lu Yuan was responsible for, and how could she put her personal fate above the entire Kryptonian? But the price is likely to be that she will be surrounded by the enemy to death. Now it is obvious that Darkseid's order may be to capture alive, otherwise Alice will undoubtedly die if thousands of guns are fired. Thinking of this, Lu Yuan didn't dare to delay any longer, so he couldn't care less about Darkseid and Steppenwolf in front of him. With a sharp kick on the ground, Lu Yuan flew into the air quickly, heading straight for Alice's spaceship in the distance. While still halfway, Lu Yuan's eyes started to light up, and he shot out 2 terrifying heat rays like searchlights, and began to clear those Darkseid spaceships from outside. Even with the technology of Apocalypse stars, even if this is a spaceship that can span the Milky Way and even more distant space, at the moment can't resist Lu Yuan's heat ray. Whenever his heat ray swept across, the spaceship hit would be completely vaporized, leaving no trace. Seeing him approaching quickly like this, while quickly sweeping away one piece after another of the enemy spaceships, he finally came in front of Alice. Why are you here? Alice was not happy when she saw Lu Yuan, but asked anxiously, then you solved the problem of the mother box? Lu Yuan said that once the mother box is Trinity, the entire planet Krypton will perish. Lu Yuan flew forward to the side of the spaceship and drove side by side. While continuing to sweep away the surrounding enemies, he said without turning his head, it's temporarily resolved. It's just for the time being. The 3 mother boxes are still in Darkseid's hands, and Darkseid is still alive. He just came to rescue Alice. Temporarily turn off the heat ray before Lu Yuan dares to look back at Alice. Otherwise, even Alice would have died if he had turned back just now. You'd better stay by my side, Lu Yuan said. I don't feel relieved if I let you run around alone. He is also slow-witted. Although he will face the most powerful enemy, but at this time, how can there be a safer place than staying by his side? He is also stupid. Alice rolled her eyes. Don't look at her like this. Before that was also the most high-level general under Lu Yuan, a fighting faction in full swing. And unlike Lu Yuan, she used to be Lu Yuan's closest bodyguard. In her words, Lu Yuan couldn't beat her before. But what I have to admit is that the power that Lu Yuan is starting to show now is beyond Alice's imagination. How did it come about? And what happened to him? Alice wanted to find out, but she also knew that now was not the time. Suddenly, the flight attendant in the cockpit made an astonishing move. In fact, he had been looking at Lu Yuan with terrified eyes. Yuan bumped into it. As a result, Lu Yuan was unscathed, while the spacecraft smashed half of its armor. Lu Yuan was dumbfounded. "What are you doing?" The flight crew made a terrified call. "Monster." Lu Yuan and Alice. Well, Lu Yuan always forgets that his current appearance may be scarier than Darkseid. Maybe in the eyes of the Kryptonians, he is no different from those enemies and the monster Darkseid. Only Alice knows that the monster in front of her is her childhood sweetheart, and even the former commander-in-chief. But it's useless to say anything now. The flight attendant was too reckless. He bumped into it and knocked himself out. Lu Yuan sighed helplessly, had no choice but to reach out and lift off the top cover of the spaceship, and then gently took Alice into his arms. As for the flight attendant, Lu Yuan was holding his clothes in his hands and threw them out casually. It depends on God's will whether he lives or dies. Anyway, he is not so narrow-minded in retaliation for calling himself a monster. Turning around, Lu Yuan turned on the heat ray again. He turned his head and scanned the sky from left to right. In an instant, all enemy spaceships within sight were swept away. This is really a model of killing with eyes. But this is only a small part. In fact, the skies above Kandor City have completely messed up. The army of Kandor City has been fully dispatched. Dozens of terrifying aircraft carrier-class spaceships are confronting more enemy motherships. The two sides have sent countless small spaceships to build a messy and terrifying battlefield. That is Darkseid's follow-up force, and now it has also broken into the atmosphere of Krypton. Krypton originally had defensive measures such as protective shields, and they had already been activated. But the sky above the city that could only defend the city of Kandor is now burning the flames of war into the planet's atmosphere. If this continues, perhaps Kandor City will be fine, but the surrounding environment will definitely be severely damaged. Krypton has also begun to respond. More and more troops are coming from other cities, and countless aircraft carriers are coming quickly surrounded by countless spaceships. Darkseid's army is indeed terrifying. He has even conquered tens of thousands of worlds. However, the power of Krypton also surprised him. Not only did he meet a terrifying enemy like Lu Yuan, but Krypton's technological power was also strong enough to fight him. If Krypton knew he was coming from the beginning, it would be impossible for Darkseid to have the opportunity to enter the surface of Krypton. Now he saw the power of Krypton, and when Krypton reacted, it was unfolding a huge encirclement to surround Darkseid's entire army. For the power of Krypton, no one has more say than Lu Yuan, the former commander-in-chief. He is well aware that all Krypton's active military forces can amount to tens of millions of elite soldiers, and there are more than 1,000 aircraft carriers still in service, and each aircraft carrier carries tens of thousands of search ships. This was not long ago when Krypton experienced a major battle. Otherwise, Darkseid would only encounter an even more terrifying nailplate. His decision to attack Krypton was absolutely stupid. And now, Darkseid has paid the price. Darkseid was supported by Steppenwolf and returned to his spaceship. It was one of the first spaceships to break into the surface before Krypton could react. Except for one that was smashed by Lu Yuan's punch, only this last spaceship remained. There is one. Darkseid lay on the deck at the entrance of the spaceship in some embarrassment, looked up at the terrifying face of Krypton finally showing, and couldn't help but say to himself, "Kryptonian, I will definitely get back this shame." And that monster. If Lu Yuan heard this, he would definitely reply, "Call me a monster? How much better will you be if you don't p***s and take care of yourself?" 10. I have to say that Krypton's military power should not be underestimated. When Krypton was caught off guard at the beginning and finally reacted now, they finally showed their true strength. Krypton not only defeated its opponents in the same fixed star system, but also gradually became the overlord of the galaxy. In the future, they even expanded to the entire galaxy for a time. Needless to say, the size of the Milky Way is huge, and the positions of Krypton and the Earth are just at the two ends of the Milky Way. But in the end, Krypton even developed to the Earth's satellite moon, where colonized space stations were left, and explorers' footprints were also left on the Earth. It can be seen that the power and technology of Krypton are by no means simple. Including now, even if the enemy is the new Protoss led by Darkseid himself, they are not at a loss. Not to mention that Lu Yuan prevented Darkseid and the integration of the three mother boxes, and now in the atmosphere of Krypton, more and more Kryptonian military forces rushed to the battlefield. The situation began to stabilize, and the Kryptonian army had surrounded Darkseid's Apocalypse Star army. Spaceship to spaceship, Krypton has more spaceships. Mothership to mothership, Krypton is also more numerous. Darkseid's army began to struggle and even failed. Darkseid also saw this point. Let's retreat. We lost. Darkseid slowly closed his eyes. In fact, even himself was knocked over by Lu Yuan before, including a huge amount of deep pit left in his chest until now. In the future, he decided to leave that scar behind. He will always remember the shame that Lu Yuan left him, and sooner or later, he will come back to regain the dignity that was discarded here. Steppenwolf showed a surprised expression. It was the first time he saw Darkseid admit defeat. Inadvertently, there was a thoughtful look in his eyes. Boom. The spacecraft on the ground started to start the engine, and the hatch was slowly closing. Darkseid, don't run. Lu Yuan also noticed the situation here, and was about to rush over with a loud shout. However, just when Lu Yuan was about to rush at full speed to prevent Darkseid from escaping, to leave this dark tyrant completely, and to deal with this terrible enemy before he grew up, Alice in her arms let out a muffled groan. Although Alice is a Kryptonian, her physical fitness is no different from that of ordinary Earthlings on Kryptonian. She doesn't have Lu Yuan's terrifying defensive power. Once Lu Yuan suddenly enters into too fast speed, she will not be able to bear it at first. But when Lu Yuan belatedly wanted to deploy a biological stance to protect Alice, Darkseid's spaceship had already soared into the sky, breaking through the protective shield of Kandor City from the inside. In the end, he escaped smoothly. It seems that Darkseid's life should not die. Including 3 mother boxes were also taken by the 2 remaining twins. Lu Yuan could only raise his head helplessly, watching Darkseid leave the atmosphere of Krypton with the remaining troops after being supported by his fleet of spaceships and having to abandon some abandoned pawns. This sudden battle is finally over, and it's a big win for Krypton. Darkseid miscalculated the power and strength of Krypton, which cost him a heavy price. Most importantly, he did not expect to meet a monster like Lu Yuan on Krypton. After Lu Yuan became Doomsday, he not only possessed the same strength as Darkseid of at the moment, but also had endless physical strength. So when they started fighting, once Darkseid couldn't defeat Lu Yuan quickly, then he will gradually fall into the disadvantaged. What's more, Doomsday claims to be immortal and immune to the last damage. It is almost impossible for Darkseid to defeat Lu Yuan. No wonder even Darkseid calls Lu Yuan a monster. Even his most terrifying father, Yuga Khan, although Darkseid didn't have the courage to dare to provoke him at all, at least he knew that Yuga Khan could be defeated, but Yuga Khan was too powerful. Only when it is strong can it appear invincible. And Lu Yuan is different. Lu Yuan's current strength is only comparable to Darkseid. These 2 big guys are actually still in a state of immaturity. But the power Lu Yuan displayed was so unreasonable. It's not a question of strength, but it seems that it can't be killed at all. It will even be immune to your power, and Darkseid's attack will have no effect at all later. It seems that I need more power, and rays like his, Darkseid thought to himself. He is preparing for the next fight with Lu Yuan. He will not make this mistake again, and he will be fully prepared to restore his dignity. And this time the loss was so huge, he had to find a way to make up for the lack of his subordinates as soon as possible. Thus, the plan of the Apocalypse Astral Demon Legion was born. At the same time, after seeing Lu Yuan's individual strength, a plan for elite subordinates also began to appear in Darkseid's heart, which was the prototype of the future Dark Elite Force. Not to mention Darkseid's embarrassing retreat. On the other hand, Krypton guarded their planet, and they began to celebrate this big victory. Lu Yuan and Alice were equally happy about it. Although Lu Yuan will inevitably feel regretful in his heart, it is a pity that he was not able to keep Darkseid here forever before the rise of Darkseid. After this, Darkseid will definitely make a comeback and become even stronger. At that time, the entire universe, and even the entire multi-universe will be endangered. He even conquered 100 million worlds. This is Darkseid, and Darkseid has such terrifying strength. He is one of the most threatening bosses in the entire DC universe. What are you thinking? Alice in her arms noticed Lu Yuan's distraction and couldn't help but smile and raised her hands to hold Lu Yuan's big cheek. Her current posture is being held by Lu Yuan's arms, and she just sits in the arms of her lover so calmly. Compared with Lu Yuan's 3-meter-high body, she seems like a child. But Alice didn't feel embarrassed at all and said with a smile, "You led us to victory again, and you once again protected Krypton. I really love you." As she spoke, Alice couldn't help kissing Lu Yuan as a reward. On the contrary, Lu Yuan was quite embarrassed, and he opened his ferocious bloody mouth to reveal a smirk. Alice shook her head speechlessly. "No wonder you scared people before. This is too scary," including that she called Lu Yuan a monster before. Lu Yuan has black hair. Sister, can you expose the fault in person like this? When a pair of lovers enjoy the joy of victory after the war, they ignore that their location is just above the city, and with the end of the war, they are already very conspicuous. Suddenly, an energy shell descended from the sky, and the target was Lu Yuan. 11. This cannonball came too suddenly. Lu Yuan's eyes were still on his lover in front of him, and he didn't have the slightest defense at all. After all, this is his second home planet besides Earth, and he has just done his best to usher in victory for Krypton. Even if no one knows, he is definitely the biggest contributor. If the three mother boxes are integrated into one, Darkseid can destroy Krypton. It was he who stopped and defeated Darkseid, and Darkseid has been beaten away in embarrassment. There are no enemies here anymore, isn't it? So there is no defense at all. But once again, he ignored his current appearance. In the eyes of others, he was no longer the supreme commander of Krypton, the heroic Lu Yuan. He is Doomsday now, and it seems that he is no different from Darkseid. At least in the eyes of ordinary people, they are all monsters. As a result, the Kryptonian fleet in the sky began to shift their targets. They did not disperse, but directly aimed at Lu Yuan above the city. Simply, when Darkseid first attacked, the residents in that area had already fled, so there was no need to worry about accidentally injuring their own people. So when the first shell hit the back of Lu Yuan, who was caught off guard, the terrifying energy shells one after another fell from the sky like rain, quickly covering Lu Yuan and Alice completely. Alice hid in Lu Yuan's arms, and it was difficult to find her existence. The Kryptonian army has only one goal, and that is to destroy this remaining monster, that is, the enemy. Destroy that monster as soon as possible, before he harms the people of Kandor. The commander issued an order with only one goal, the complete elimination of Lu Yuan. This change was too sudden, and Lu Yuan seemed to be completely stunned. He didn't dodge at all, and was immediately baptized completely by the shells. I said before that the military power of Krypton must not be underestimated, and now Lu Yuan has personally experienced an encounter with the Darkseid army. It's just that from Darkseid to Lu Yuan, he was baptized by his powerful army. Countless forts fired far more than 10,000 bullets, and the entire sky seemed to be filled with shells. Some energy shells even met in mid-air, and then condensed into a more terrifying mixed energy. Under such a terrifying concentration of fire, everyone spontaneously thought that the monster was dead. Normally, that's right. But when the artillery fire stopped and the dust settled there, a huge body hunched over in front of all the Kryptonians. Lu Yuan is not called a monster for no reason. He survived. It's just that even Lu Yuan didn't pay the price at all. Not only was his back ripped apart, his bones were even exposed in some places, and even his terrifying bone armor was smashed to pieces. There is also Lu Yuan's head. He lowered his head to keep Alice firmly in his arms, but he revealed the relatively most vulnerable back of his head. That's right. Don't forget that Alice is still in Lu Yuan's arms. When the terrifying energy shells slanted down, Lu Yuan immediately guarded Alice tightly in his arms and curled up as much as possible, using his huge body to block all attacks for Alice. But in this way, he himself couldn't guarantee it. Even more than half of his head was abruptly melted by the shell, and the entire back of his head disappeared. Lu Yuan's eyes were still wide open, staring at Alice in his arms with the consciousness that was about to be lost. As a result, Lu Yuan found that even though he tried so hard to protect Alice, those artillery shells were energy shells that penetrated everywhere. Even if there was a slight gap, the energy leaked in would be enough to destroy Alice's life structure. Alice. Lu Yuan forcibly retained his self-awareness, and the fatal injuries to his body and brain began to recover at an incredible speed visible to the naked eye, but he didn't care about those at all, but shouted anxiously, "Alice? How are you doing? Gone?" Alice struggled to open her eyes. She didn't see the tragedy behind Lu Yuan, but she seemed to have guessed something, showing a miserable wry smile, and whispered softly, "Lu Yuan, don't resent them. They just didn't figure it out. The situation, I haven't recognized you yet." Lu Yuan shook his head vigorously, almost throwing out his unrepaired brain. "I don't care, as long as you are fine. But if you die, I will let everyone be buried with me, even if it is my favorite home planet and hometown, even if it was Krypton, which I would rather die to protect. No matter who it is, I will not spare anyone who dares to hurt you, and I will let the entire universe be buried with you. So don't die." Lu Yuan gritted his teeth fiercely. He was threatening Alice because he felt that Alice's life was passing away. He was worried that Alice would leave him like this, so he did not hesitate to threaten her. With the most vicious words, He only hoped that Alice would stay down. Alice showed a happy smile, but the hand that was about to be raised quietly fell powerlessly before touching Lu Yuan's cheek. No, Lu Yuan raised his head and roared angrily. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't just watch Alice lose her vital signs. He couldn't accept that Alice was going to die. On the top of his head, he saw the culprits even more. The army of Kryptonian, the army of terrible size was assembled, but at the moment hesitated to launch a second round of attack. Even the Kryptonian army has doubts and fears. Can't even an attack like that kill it? What kind of monster is this? Damn, can we really kill him? Wait a minute, there seems to be a Kryptonian in his arms. Wait, zoom in on the image. Damn it, that's General Zod. We accidentally injured General Zod. Stop it. General Zod appears to be unconscious, possibly even dead. Notify General Al immediately. The Kryptonian army finally discovered the existence of Alice. But it was too late. The beauty has lost the limit of her life. Lu Yuan no longer wants to admit it. He must also understand that Alice is dead, dying in his arms. Who would have thought that the most terrifying Darkseid had already been defeated, and this war had already been won? But the flag that was dead was still in effect. And not Lu Yuan, but Alice who set the flag. Lu Yuan didn't dare to bow his head. He held his head high, hugging his lover who had completely lost consciousness in both hands, and finally, he uttered an earth-shattering roar. Ah, what am I protecting? I am protecting Krypton and I died once, but you didn't let me die, and asked me to guard Krypton again after I was resurrected. I did it, but why did you deprive me of my love? You don't let me die, and you don't let me live. I, Lu Yuan Al, hereby swear that everyone will pay the price. Krypton, let me destroy it myself. 12. Lu Yuan is crazy. It is impossible not to be crazy, and it is impossible for anyone to not be crazy when he encounters his miserable situation. And he made a terrible decision. This planet he was willing to pay all costs to protect. He wants to destroy it himself. Isn't he just Doomsday? He was supposed to bring destruction to everything. I said, if you dare to die, I will let everyone. I will let the entire universe be buried with you. If you die, is there still a need for this universe to exist? Kill. Lu Yuan let out a furious roar. He didn't want to keep a calm consciousness. He deliberately fell into madness. He didn't want to wake up again, because it would be painful. He sank into chaos completely according to his intention, as if he could ignore his lover's departure in this way. But no matter how crazy he was, Lu Yuan still slowly fell to the ground, and first carefully placed Alice's body on the ground. Then, Lu Yuan raised his head again, and with hatred and irrational eyes, he suddenly released two terrifying heat rays. That was once a deadly weapon to wipe out Darkseid's countless army subordinates, but now it is aimed at his own army. When the sky lit up with two dazzling red lights, they just swept away, and the dense Kryptonian army in the sky was immediately cleared of a large area. What? The Kryptonians who survived were taken aback. There was no chance of reaction and resistance at all. When Lu Yuan's heat ray touched the spaceship, even the armor that could resist countless terrifying elements in the universe melted instantly. And with the eyes of Doomsday, the range of the huge and terrifying heat ray, which is as terrifying as a searchlight, plus the spread from near to far, can even easily accommodate an entire spaceship. In this way, it is no less easy than erasing handwriting with an eraser. He is Marshal Lu Yuan Al? But isn't the Marshal already dead? What kind of existence did we offend? If he is really the Marshal, why did the commander ask us to open fire? Lucy, why didn't General Al stop us? This is not the time to talk about that. Damn it. Round 2 is coming. Get out of the way, out of the way. Lu Yuan didn't stop. After using the heat ray to easily sweep away a large area of Kryptonian spaceships and several warships from left to right in the sky, he started a second round of sweeping from right to left. That terrifying heat ray seemed to be able to melt all matter in the world, and once again wiped out a large area of Krypton's huge army. The Kryptonian spaceships and battleships that were densely packed in the sky were almost half lost after only 2 rounds of heat ray baptism. If he was allowed to continue like this, 2 more attacks would wipe out his army completely. That was a feat that even Darkseid's army could not do. Even Darkseid's army was beaten away by the Kryptonian army, but now it is so unworthy of mentioning in front of Lu Yuan. Hurry up and disperse. Commander, contact the commander. Damn it, what's going on? Don't those counselors really know that he is Marshal Al? The commanders of the Kryptonian army are already panicking. Seeing that Lu Yuan was quickly destroying them with terrifying force, there was nothing he could do. Counterattack? They thought too, but they had already attacked Lu Yuan with the most powerful firepower before, and in the end, didn't Lu Yuan survive? Instead, Lu Yuan's attack could easily kill them. The only thing they can do now is to try to survive Lu Yuan's attack. Or who will appease the marshal's anger? Explain something must be wrong. Are you crazy? We attacked Lord Marshal first, and didn't you see it? Something must have happened to General Zod. Don't you know the relationship between Lord Marshal and General Zod? If it wasn't for the Owl family and the Zod family, the big family tried their best to stop them, and they were married long ago. What the hell did we do? The Marshal once paid the price of his life to protect Krypton from being harmed by Dekosum, but we caused him a second injury and even hurt the lover he guarded at the expense of his life. Damn, we do. When Lu Yuan's identity was finally realized, those Kryptonian troops became silent. After all, Lu Yuan was the supreme marshal and made contributions worthy of people's admiration. As Alice said when she was dying, they obeyed the order to attack only because they didn't know Lu Yuan's identity. Once they knew, they would naturally dare not hurt Lu Yuan again. However, Lu Yuan completely ignored it. Seeing that the Kryptonian army began to disperse, to avoid being concentrated and quickly cleared by Lu Yuan again. Lu Yuan sneered, "Do you think this is all right?" He didn't dare to push the ground hard anymore, but this didn't prevent him from flying up quickly, and at that moment, he far exceeded the range of the speed of sound, and he didn't even hear the sound of breaking the sound barrier. At this moment, Lu Yuan didn't even react to the breaking of the sound barrier. Lu Yuan instantly flew into the sky and took the initiative to come to the siege of the Kryptonian army. He stays at the center of the Kryptonian army. All the Kryptonians were shocked. What is the marshal going to do? No way. Someone might have guessed something and showed a terrified expression. And in the next second, the so-called "no way" was finally staged. Lu Yuan's eyes lit up again. He was too lazy to do it himself. There was no more convenient way to attack, and no faster way to destroy the enemy. He already sees Krypton as an enemy. Lu Yuan once again released that terrifying heat ray, and now he has come to the same position as the Kryptonian army, and is still in the middle of the Kryptonian army. As Lu Yuan made a quick turnaround, the terrifying heat ray also turned around in the entire Kryptonian army. In an instant, the entire sky was quiet, and the army that was so terrifying before, at the moment, was empty. Whether it's a huge mothership or a spaceship for individual combat, everything has been wiped out. Even if there are remaining spaceships, they will be immediately locked and vaporized by Lu Yuan's heat ray. As Lu Yuan swore, no one could escape. They were all wiped out by him. It seemed that the world was quiet, and the once huge Kryptonian army was completely destroyed just like that. And after defeating a powerful enemy, they were destroyed by the marshal they once admired the most. And all of this is their own doing. They were the ones who first offended the people who shouldn't be offended, and they were the first to hurt the people they admired the most. Lu Yuan didn't care that he was transformed into a biochemical weapon. He didn't care how ugly he was after becoming Doomsday, and he didn't care that he was arrested and even locked up in the laboratory in the first place. He really doesn't care how he is treated and hurt. However, only Alice, that is his only reverse scale, touches it and dies. They not only touched, but also took away his Alice. Krypton must perish. Lu Yuan lowered his head. His eyes gradually lit up again. This time he aimed at Alice on the ground. More precisely, he aimed at the core of Krypton. The most terrifying thing about heat ray is its temperature. Once Lu Yuan penetrates the surface and breaks the core of Krypton, it will definitely be more terrifying than the effect caused by the mother box. This planet will completely collapse. He wants Krypton to be buried with Alice. Wait for me, Alice. After I bury the universe with you, I will find you. 13. Lu Yuan aimed at Alice. Even if he wanted to deny it, he could only accept the fact that Alice was dead. He wants to personally send Alice on the last journey, and starting with Alice, he will destroy the core of Krypton and completely destroy the civilization of this planet. Goodbye, my favorite Alice. Goodbye, my favorite person and my favorite planet. Lu Yuan muttered to himself, and his eyes began to light up gradually. In the next second, he will emit a terrifying heat ray, which will penetrate Alice's body in an instant, and then easily break through the surface of Krypton until it destroys Krypton core. At that time, the entire planet Krypton will perish, including all life on Krypton. He wants to bury his lover with all these. But at this moment, a person appeared beside Alice, opened his hands in a gesture of stopping, and raised his head and shouted, "Come here, stop, big brother." Lu Xiao, Lu Yuan Al's younger sister, is only 1 year younger than Lu Yuan. and is his biological sister, who has the same father and mother. When they were young, Lu Yuan, Alice, and Lucy grew up together, and this younger sister liked to chase the big brother and Alice around. The reason why she became General Al in Candor City was also because of the influence of Lu Yuan and Alice, and she also went to serve later. It's just that she doesn't have the ability of Big Brother and Alice. Unlike Lu Yuan and Alice who have reached such a high position, she can only stay in Candor City. But Lucy never expected that what happened later. When she heard the news that the Big Brother died in battle, she was extremely sad. But now, Lucy looked at the army that had turned into a monster and destroyed Krypton with his own hands, and was also the Big Brother of his former army, but she could only sigh softly. Sister-in-law is dead. What else are you going to do? Haven't you already avenged her? Lu Yuan slowly descended from the sky. He came in front of Lucy, condescendingly, looking at the younger sister with a complicated face, and related memories flooded his mind. You go? Only you don't have to be buried with Alice, Lu Yuan said softly. Only Lucy he was willing to let go. Only her. Lucy shook her head stubbornly. If the Big Brother insists on destroying Krypton, I should also be buried with my sister-in-law, so I won't leave. Lu Yuan frowned. Are you threatening me? Do you think I dare not? Do you think I will forgive everything those people have done just for your sake? It's absolutely impossible, Lucy smiled. Who can compare to sister-in-law's position in your heart? Although you like me too, you only like me to the extent that you can protect my sister. But for sister-in-law, you can give your life. We killed your sister-in-law who was so important to you, and it is definitely reasonable for you to retaliate wildly. Now that you know. But Big Brother, you never thought that maybe sister-in-law could be resurrected? What? Lu Yuan was shocked, but then he shook his head. Do you want to make Alice into a monster like me? That's impossible. You don't know, I'm an exception. Once transformed becoming a monster like me, the resurrected person will not be able to maintain rationality, and will lose all memories. From the time Lu Yuan crossed into this body, Lu Yuan already knew that if he hadn't happened to cross over, Doomsday would not retain memory and reason. Although Doomsday is the most powerful biochemical weapon, it is out of control, and even the Kryptonians who created Doomsday cannot control Doomsday. He was an accident, and only this time was an exception. So he can't do that, because even turning Alice into Doomsday, she won't be resurrected. Or rather, it would just create a real monster instead of resurrecting Alice. How could he have the heart to trample Alice's body like that? In other words, it's not that Lu Yuan didn't think of turning Alice into the same Doomsday as himself, and he certainly wouldn't dislike Alice for turning ugly, just as Alice never disliked him now. But can't, because it's useless. He couldn't bear to let Alice die even after her death. Just when Lu Yuan rejected Lucy, he was about to get impatient. Lucy shook her head slowly again and explained, You're wrong, Big Brother. I'm not saying let sister-in-law become a monster like you. I mean, maybe there are other ways. Any other way? Lu Yuan frowned, but he suppressed his impatience and wanted to hear what Lucy wanted to say. Lucy did not disappoint Lu Yuan either and continued. You also know that our Al family is the descendant of Ruao, the god of the sun and hope. Ruao, the god of Krypton, is known as the god of the sun and hope. Lu Yuan nodded. So what? But maybe you haven't read the family's secret book. Long before Ruao's time, our fixed star was not red, but a healthier yellow. The secret book says that the yellow sun can give us strength. We Kryptonians were once able to soar freely in the sky, just like you can fly. You can also easily resist any attack, and even awakening some powerful forces. And our only weakness is the green gem dug out of the ground. Why did Krypton once worship the sun? Because the sun can give us power. Big Brother, I have a bold guess. There are other yellow fixed stars in the universe. Maybe you can find them, and that will make us Kryptonians very powerful. Sister-in-law is indeed dead. But if the yellow sun can really give us unimaginable power, once the damaged life structure of sister-in-law is repaired, can she really not be resurrected? Lu Yuan was shocked by Lucy's words. Yeah, he seems to have overlooked that. He knows it. He knows with absolute certainty that the power of Kryptonians does come from the yellow sun, and only Kryptonians who have been exposed to the yellow sun can become Superman. Since he knew all this, why did he ignore it? Alice, is it really possible for her to come back from the dead? Not being transformed into a terrifying monster, not being turned into a bioweapon Doomsday, but a truly intact resurrection. Lu Yuan looked at Lucy deeply. How do you know this? The question now is why Lucy seemed to have foreseen this scene in advance, as if she had been prepared. Lucy showed a sad smile. If I say that when I heard the news of your death in battle, I no longer wanted to stay on this planet. So I planned to try the things recorded in the secret book. Do you believe it? Why? Those old things in the family prevented you from marrying your sister-in-law and brought you to such an end. Do you think I will forgive them? 14. Lu Yuan stared deeply at Lucy, and Lucy was also staring at him. He didn't choose to believe it immediately, but now he seems to have no choice. You'd better not lie to me, or maybe you just want to buy time. Lu Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. Even if it was his beloved younger sister, Lucy couldn't help feeling a little scared, but she didn't back down. It won't be too late for you to come back by then. Lu Yuan snorted softly, walked past Lucy, came to Alice and squatted down. Or, even if you lied to me, it doesn't really matter, because I seem to have overlooked another method. Lu Yuan suddenly remembered something, the mother box. Why would he ignore it? The mother box built with Apocalypse Star technology has many powerful abilities. It includes opening the sonic boom channel to Apocalypse and other worlds, as well as transforming the planet's environment and so on. Most importantly, the mother box can also rearrange the molecular structure of the substance. To put it simply, class monsters are transformed in large quantities with the technology of the mother box. Theoretically speaking, with the mother box technology, the dead can even be brought back to life, such as the resurrection of Superman. Lu Yuan was very annoyed. At that time, Darkseid had been defeated by him, and the mother box was at his fingertips, even if only one was left for research. But Alice didn't die at that time, and he went to relieve Alice from the crisis, so how could he have expected what happened later? It's useless to say anything now. Lu Yuan gently hugged Alice, and after finally looking at Lucy behind her eyes, she slowly flew up. Goodbye, Lucy, goodbye to my sister, and my home planet. Please pray that Alice will be resurrected, otherwise the next time I come back here again, it will be the day of the destruction of Krypton. After speaking, he quickly soared into the sky, directly broke through the protective shield of Kandor City and the atmosphere of Krypton, entered the vacuum space of the universe with his body, and then flew away quickly. Lucy looked at the direction where Lu Yuan was leaving and let out a long sigh of relief. At least Krypton is safe now. But don't those guys think that it's okay? Lucy narrowed her eyes slightly, revealing an undisguised hatred. It's time to settle accounts with those people who made her big brother into such a monster and even further harmed it. Though you think the Owl family is easy to bully, and that family, some old and stale things should also be changed. Later, the experimental materials about Doomsday were completely blocked, and even including the 3 words Doomsday became a taboo, reaching the point where anyone who mentioned it would be locked up. Since then, Krypton has never dared to conduct experiments on biological and chemical weapons, and even the expansion of the universe's entire galaxy colonization plan has been affected. Then, Krypton entered another field, which will not be mentioned later. Look at Lu Yuan again. At first, he worried that he would not be able to adapt to the outer space environment, but soon he found that his body had completely adapted to the outer space environment. I have to say that the setting of Doomsday is too buggy. At first he could still feel the cold, but then he no longer felt anything. And when he passed by the red giant star in his hometown, he even got used to the hot environment. In this way, he seems to be able to survive in any environment. And after entering the cosmic space, he also protected Alice from a biological standpoint, and in the process, his control over the biological standpoint became stronger and stronger. If he had been able to skillfully control the biological position before, maybe Alice wouldn't have to die. But it is meaningless to say this now. In fact, just like Darkseid has not yet grown up, Lu Yuan is not in the strongest state now. He had just awakened as Doomsday not long ago, and he hadn't yet absorbed the power of the yellow sun's rays. Even if he could adapt to the red fixed star, it was far less powerful than the yellow sun's power. He can also get stronger. It's just that Lu Yuan's attention is no longer on himself now. While guarding Alice's body carefully, he flies to the deeper part of the universe, completely relying on his subconscious senses. He doesn't know the orientation and coordinates, and he doesn't even know whether the universe has a direction, let alone the direction of the Earth. That's right, his next target is exactly where the Earth is. Isn't the Earth's fixed star sun just yellow? He needs the sun's rays to repair Alice's damaged life structure, and he hopes that the yellow sun's rays can revive Alice. Otherwise, he might just have to find the whereabouts of Apocalypse. He knows that the Apocalypse star is very powerful, and the true power of the new Protoss has not yet been revealed, and even Yuga Khan, the real master of the Apocalypse star, was a terrifying existence that Darkseid didn't even dare to meet, and had to run away just by hearing his name. But if this can't bring Alice back to life, he has no choice. No matter how many times he dies, He will come back from the dead and eventually conquer the planet Apocalypse and take the mother box from there. Alice, don't worry, I'll wake you up soon. Lu Yuan lowered his head, looking at Alice, who seemed to be really just sleeping, and whispered softly. Even in the vacuum of space in the universe, he can speak. But it was also because of the signal he left behind that it attracted someone's attention. 3 days later, a green light blocked in front of Lu Yuan. Who are you? A bird-like guy blocked Lu Yuan's way. Lu Yuan recognized his identity just by looking at the other party. He was from Zuter, a civilized planet that also belonged to the Milky Way, and was not far from Krypton. And the other party's identity is the Green Lantern guarding this sector. Green Lantern, the Green Lantern Corps from planet OA, is led by a group of blue villains known as the Asgardians of the universe. They divided the universe into 3,600 sectors and numbered each sector to distinguish them. Among them, the Milky Way is divided into 2 sectors. The area where Krypton is located is 2813, and the area where the Earth is located on the other side is 2814. But Lu Yuan once suspected that the Milky Way is also like a fixed star system. It is generally believed that there is a terrible black hole in the Milky Way, and then the entire Milky Way is slowly rotating with huge amounts of gravity, just like the stars and celestial bodies in the solar system revolve around as it revolves around the sun. In this way, the positions of Krypton and the Earth may change every tens of thousands or millions of years. Until then, does the sector number still make sense? Definitely, he can't take these things into consideration now. Lu Yuan looked at Green Lantern in front of him and said coldly, "Get lost or die." That's Green Lantern. As the first legion in the universe, self-proclaimed, how could it be so angry? At that time, the Birdman Green Lantern released a ball of green light towards Lu Yuan, which turned into an iron cage and locked Lu Yuan in. I don't think you are a good person when I see you. Be honest with me now. Since you know that I am not a good person, you still dare to provoke me? I don't think you have died before. 15. Suddenly a fight broke out. When Lu Yuan suddenly encountered a Green Lantern, the two immediately fought. Why did it become like this? That definitely means that Lu Yuan is not in the state now, and he rushed to the solar system to revive Alice, but he was stopped by the other party again, and his tone of speech must be unpleasant. However, Green Lantern is the kind of guy who is not very strong, but has a big temper. So the two clashed. The Birdman Green Lantern even used the green light ring to release a ball of green light, using Green Lantern's unique ability to conjure a cage and lock Lu Yuan up. The green light ring represents the willpower of the green part of the visible emotional spectrum. Specifically, as long as the willpower of Green Lantern is strong enough, the power it will exert will be stronger. And the Green Lantern ring can also be materialized through things Green Lantern imagined. In other words, the bigger the brain hole of Green Lantern, the more abilities it can show. Here is a brief overview: flight ability, visualization of various weapons and things, force field construction, phase shuttle and universe translation, etc. That's why Birdman Green Lantern can do whatever he wants, turning the power of his Green Lantern ring into a cage. But, do you think you can lock me up like this? Lu Yuan snorted coldly. Don't get carried away with me. He was not willing to let go of Alice, let alone let go of Alice even for a moment, so he flew up and kicked her. He heard a click, and his terrible big feet kicked the cage to pieces. This time, Birdman Green Lantern was shocked. Their Green Lantern Corps is known as the #1 army in the universe, but what is the origin of this guy in front of him? What kind of ruthless person is this? Lu Yuan didn't use Heat Ray to attack, he had his own purpose. Shwa. Arriving in front of the other party in an instant, Lu Yuan looked down at the Birdman, put great pressure on him, and said slowly, I give you 2 choices, either take me to the Earth or die. The Birdman still wanted to resist, but Lu Yuan's eyes slowly lit up. He would not be indecisive or benevolent. If this guy didn't know what to do, Lu Yuan would definitely kill him without any hesitation. At worst, he snatched the green light ring, and then searched for the whereabouts of the Earth. The green light ring is also similar to half a smart computer, which also stores an encyclopedia, which records almost all the knowledge that the OA star and the Asgardians know. This also allows cosmic translation to exist in almost all languages of civilization. Definitely, including Green Lantern's experience will be automatically recorded. As the saying goes, there are advantages and disadvantages. It's just that it is not so easy to become a Green Lantern, because the Green Lantern ring will be selected, which means that it is not the person who chooses the ring, but the ring chooses the right person as the owner. Whenever a Green Lantern dies, the Green Lantern ring will automatically look for a suitable person nearby, or fly straight back to OA. So once there is a war between the Green Lantern Corps of a certain scale and other forces, It will trigger a considerable rain of green lights. When the Green Lantern falls in pieces, the green light rings will also rain in pieces. That was spectacular. Lu Yuan had unconsciously conceived such a terrifying picture in his mind. If the Birdman in front of him is really not sensible, he doesn't mind making a scene. Earth? What is that? Birdman showed a blank expression. Lu Yuan frowned, thinking, isn't the Earth famous? Simply put forward a new title. That is a planet in the solar system. Solar system? Birdman still looked at a loss. Lu Yuan was furious. Did this guy do it on purpose? It wasn't until Lu Yuan gave more information, such as how many planets there are in the solar system and their general structure, that Bird finally retrieved the information in a cold sweat. It turns out to be the original galaxy where high-level intelligent life hasn't yet been born. It's a galaxy in Sector 2814. It's not too far away from here. I can open the wormhole for you. Birdman suddenly cooperated. This is because he has felt death threats more than once. Lu Yuan at the moment doesn't know what he looks like in the eyes of others. He is more than 3 meters tall and is a terrifying giant with a cold expression on his ferocious face and crazy eyes that want to destroy everything. With a mouth full of sharp fangs, the Birdman wondered if he wanted to eat himself. He looks like a bird, but he is indeed an intelligent life. In particular, the atmosphere and aura surrounding Lu Yuan made Birdman realize the reality. This is an existence that he can't afford to provoke, so why did he go out of his way to follow that message? Isn't this a murder? An existence that can survive in the cosmic space with a physical body is not guarded by the power of the will of the Green Lantern like their Green Lantern, and it is definitely not something they can provoke. The Green Lantern also cannot survive in space without the Green Lantern ring. With their weak physique, as long as they lose the protection of the green light ring, they will die instantly in the universe. He finally knew he was afraid. If you dare to lie to me, I know the coordinates of Star Zuder, and then I will let you know my real strength and means, Lu Yuan threatened. Birdman swallowed his saliva. He was really scared. He was not afraid of death, but he couldn't hurt his home planet. I see. I will indeed open the wormhole leading to the so-called Earth for you. You don't want a wormhole, right now. The Birdman didn't dare to talk nonsense anymore, and quickly opened a similar wormhole with the power of the green light ring. The impulsive passage of the portal. That's also their special ability. The OUA star is considered to be the center of the universe, the core of the universe in the sense of physical location. But the universe is so vast, and the distance is so many light years. If there is no means, it will take a lifetime to go to OA star once. A lifetime wasted on the road? How many generations of Green Lantern might it take to catch a trip? Therefore, the green light ring can open the wormhole, allowing them to cross a long distance at a time. And it is not impossible to go directly from the Earth to OA star. It's just that would take a lot of energy. The green light ring is not a panacea. In fact, it needs to be charged every day, which is very troublesome. Lu Yuan glanced at the wormhole passage in front of him, and then at the Birdman. The latter made assurances again and again. You have threatened me like this. I will definitely not dare to play tricks. Only then did Lu Yuan nodded in satisfaction, and was about to walk in. Wait a minute, who are you? Birdman asked behind him. Lu Yuan paused, then said without looking back, Doomsday. Starting today, he chooses to abandon his former identity. He is no longer the Lu Yuan Owl who sacrificed himself to protect Krypton. He is Doomsday, a terrifying monster that will bring destruction to all enemies. 16. Prior to this, Lu Yuan had no idea of the orientation and specific coordinates of the Earth and the solar system in the universe. Yes, he was indeed an Earthling. But so what? He was just an ordinary Earthling, and he never had the chance to leave the Earth. The Earth in the real world has not left the solar system until now. So how do you know the position and coordinates of the Earth? However, after passing through the wormhole opened by the Birdman Green Lantern, Lu Yuan's eyes suddenly brightened. Isn't the blue planet not far in front of him the familiar blue planet? Isn't the sun that exudes yellow light just young, healthy, and strong? At least when he saw the solar system, he could immediately recognize that it was the Earth and the sun that he was so familiar with. He finally came back, although this is not the Earth he used to live on. Here is the Earth and solar system of the DC universe. Inevitably, Lu Yuan went to look at the location of the Earth, but was taken aback for a moment. He found that the current Earth was not what he was familiar with. The current Earth was covered with a layer of primitive atmosphere. Lu Yuan shook his head and looked back. That's not what he wants to focus on now. So Lu Yuan hugged Alice and ran straight to the sun. But on the way, he was stopped again. Who are you? Why do you want to approach the sun? A carriage stopped in front of Lu Yuan, blocking his way. Carriage? That's right, it was a carriage, a magnificent golden carriage pulled by a void Pegasus. The driver was a handsome man. He looked at Lu Yuan vigilantly and took precautions. Lu Yuan was even more curious. Who are you? Are you not afraid of death? He is now in a hurry to take Alice close to the sun, to see if the strengthening of the Kryptonians with the sun's rays will give her a chance to be revived. So Lu Yuan doesn't have enough patience to speak properly now. Anyone who dares to stop him will die. The other party frowned and snorted coldly. Haven't you even heard of Shindu, the son of Olympus? You even asked me who I am?
Since I am the ruler of the sun, I am Helios.
You said you were the master of the sun? Lu Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. His expression became cold. He saw the sun was in front of him, and he even felt that as the sun entered his body, his own power was growing in a kind of way horror builds momentum. The yellow sun rays are indeed the source of Kryptonian power, including that he can also get huge amounts of benefits now. Doomsday is also a product of Krypton, and naturally has the same ability as Superman. Even Doomsday is stronger than Superman at times. You mean to say that the sun is yours? And I need your permission to get close to the sun? Lu Yuan asked. The expression on his face became more and more gloomy, and his tone also harbored murderous intentions. He was extremely impatient, and if Helios in front of him didn't know his self-knowledge anymore, he might have to make a move. As if feeling something, Helios looked at Lu Yuan, who was emitting cold air all around him, and asked in hesitation, "Why are you getting close to the sun? I can feel your strength, but if you want to harm the sun, if not, Olympus is not easy to mess with." In fact, he was already getting a little nervous. So Helios mentioned Olympus on purpose. Olympus is also ancient Greek mythology. Olympus is considered to be the mountain of the gods, and most of the ancient Greek gods live on it. The most famous ones are the 12 main gods, namely, the king of gods Zeus, the queen Hera, the sea god Poseidon, the goddess of agriculture Demeter, the goddess of wisdom Athena, the god of light Apollo, the goddess of hunting Themis, Ares, god of war, Aphrodite, god of love, Hephaestus, god of Vulcan, Hestia, goddess of hearth, and Hermes, god of God. Among them, Hestia gave up his position to Dionysus, the god of wine, because he lived with humans. And Hades, the king of the underworld, is sometimes included in the 12 gods of Olympus, the Eleusis mystery, but generally Hades is excluded because he is the ruler of the underworld. Lu Yuan's heart skipped a beat. The Olympus gods in front of him were obviously no longer just characters in myths and stories, but real beings that actually appeared in front of him. And these guys are no longer arrogant people who claim to be gods, but gods with real power. If Darkseid was a new Protoss before, then the Olympian gods represented by Helios in front of him are the so-called old gods, unlike Marvel, which focuses more on describing Norse mythology. DC focuses on ancient Greek mythology. They are indeed gods. In fact, whether it is in DC or Marvel, the universe is full of countless gods. All the myths and legends on the earth represent the existence of a lineage of gods. It's just that gods also have a world where gods live. If the universe, the world where mortals live, is regarded as the third world, then the old gods who were born earlier live in the second world. But later, due to the fighting between the old Protoss, the second world was destroyed, and then the fourth world was born, which is where the new Protoss and the Apocalypse Star are located. Why didn't Lu Yuan choose to chase Darkseid to snatch the mother box at the first time? The reason is here. The Apocalypse Star and the new Protoss are not somewhere in the universe, but in another dimension, which cannot be found by conventional methods in theory. However, there is also a saying that the Apocalypse Star also belongs to a certain sector under the jurisdiction of Green Lantern, and even the Green Lantern Corps once wanted to challenge the Dark Tyrant, but the Green Lantern Corps was destroyed. What's going on here? Lu Yuan secretly kept it in his heart. Maybe he would really go to OUA Star, the headquarters of the Green Lantern Corps in the future. The premise is that the immediate solution will not work. These thoughts are just for a moment. Lu Yuan looked at Helios, who was still struggling, thought for a while, and did not cause trouble and simply explained, "Don't worry, I just took my wife to the core of the sun. You also noticed that something happened to my wife, and I need the power of the sun to heal her. I will not destroy the sun. We just passively absorb the light from the sun." Lu Yuan is not afraid of the old Protoss. Anyway, he is immortal, and every time he takes damage, he is immune to the previous attack. What's more, he has been exposed to the light of the yellow sun. No matter how powerful the old Protoss are, they will never have endless physical strength like him. He is still improving his strength every moment. But Lu Yuan doesn't want to cause trouble. He only has one goal now, that is, to revive Alice, to revive his Alice. Then, he had to make Alice fulfill her promise that she would marry him. 17. Facing Lu Yuan's explanation, Helios on the opposite side subconsciously glanced at him holding Alice tightly in his arms. In fact, Helios had already noticed that Lu Yuan was hugging a woman who seemed to be dead, but his eyes were always focused on Lu Yuan, and he didn't bother to ask. After all, Lu Yuan's presence is too strong. Do you want to let me go there, or do you want to start a war with me? Give me an explanation as soon as possible. I can't wait for your answer forever, Lu Yuan urged impatiently. If Helios still insists on blocking, then we can only go to war. Helios swallowed, feeling the most direct hostility. He also understood what Lu Yuan meant, and after thinking about it, he drove the carriage aside and made way for it. Lu Yuan nodded in satisfaction and continued to fly forward. By the way, when passing by Helios, Lu Yuan suddenly remembered something, looked sideways at Helios and asked, I heard that you have Hades, the king of the underworld? If you are looking for him, can you resuscitate my wife? Helios shook his head again and again. Hades is the king of the underworld, and he is only in charge of the world after people die.
He is only in charge of the undead, but he cannot resurrect the dead.
Lu Yuan snorted softly. Trash? Helios grinned, pretending he didn't hear it. It seems that he is still very sensible. Lu Yuan passed Helios and his chariot and continued to fly towards the sun. Helios looked at the back of Lu Yuan quickly approaching the sun from a distance, but he didn't dare to follow up. Although he claims to be the god of the sun, in reality even he cannot get too close to the sun. The sun's rays and terrifying temperatures were enough to kill a god. But Lu Yuan was completely fearless. Even as he got closer and closer to the sun, the light he was exposed to made him stronger. If it is said that Lu Yuan, who fought against Darkseid before, is still in the initial stage, has not yet grown up, and has not yet shown the true power of Doomsday, so now, Lu Yuan felt that he had become extremely powerful. If he was facing Darkseid now, he would not have to be so troublesome. He could smash Darkseid to pieces with one punch. Definitely, Darkseid is also in an immature state. From the perspective of human beings, Darkseid at the moment is at most 8 years old. Darkseid's truly terrifying time is yet to come. Finally, Lu Yuan came to the sun. At the moment, he began to come into contact with all kinds of terrible elements emitted by the sun, the most of which are nuclear elements, as well as various solar winds caused by solar activities and so on. Those are the deadliest, and ordinary people will be reduced to ashes just by being in this position. In the beginning, Lu Yuan was a bit difficult to get close to, but gradually, as Doomsday, he automatically adapted to the environment and soon became immune to all those influences. Plop. He even went directly to the surface of the sun, stepping on the sun with a pair of big feet. Regardless of the fact that some places are full of magma, and although some places have some rocks, they also have terrible high temperatures. Lu Yuan just stood on the surface of the sun, lowered his head, and carefully watched Alice in his arms. Alice was carefully protected by him from a biological standpoint. As long as Lu Yuan survived, she would not be in danger of being turned into ashes. Even Lu Yuan sent out the X-perspective function unconsciously, noticing that Alice's body was indeed affected. As a Kryptonian, Alice also gained powerful powers after being exposed to the yellow sun's rays. Her cells are strengthening, the cells that should be dying gradually, but at the moment they glow with strong vitality. Alice's body is gradually being strengthened into a body of steel. After all, she is also a Kryptonian, and she definitely has all the powers of Superman. And this is on the surface of the sun. The speed of this transformation is very fast, just a few seconds, faster than the progress of Superman staying on the Earth for 30 years. It really works. Lu Yuan heaved a long sigh of relief. Now that Alice's cells have been strengthened and rejuvenated, it shows that this method has indeed worked. It's just that Alice is dead after all, and it's not so easy to bring people back from the dead. It may take a long time to bring her back to life, and it may even require external power to stimulate her. Lu Yuan frowned. Even though he didn't understand anything, he seemed to be able to see that even though Alice's damaged life structure was rapidly repairing, it was not that simple to really revive her. After all, she was dead, and even if her body was repaired, she still lacked something. It's as if the soul has left the body. Even if the body is repaired, it is meaningless not to get the soul back. I need strength. Lu Yuan showed a clear expression and carried Alice into the depths of the sun. He found a way to the core of the sun with perspective. While walking, Lu Yuan said to himself, our potential is unlimited. We can absorb the power of the sun and grow, until one day, until our life sublimates to the next stage, I can really wake you up. In fact, in addition to the distinction between gods and various realms in the DC universe, there are also dimensions. For example, the most famous fifth-dimensional troublemaker and Batmite, they correspond to Superman and Batman respectively. Usually they are dedicated to making trouble for the two greatest superheroes, but at critical times they are the Asgardian of Superman and Batmite respectively. As fifth-dimensional people, they used to have the highest level of compulsion because they are considered to be omnipotent. Fifth-dimensional people can rewrite history as they like, alter reality law, view the long history of time, and can change the past and the future. Not to mention that they once turned the universe into a blank and changed it back again in the next second. And if Lu Yuan remembers correctly, there was a version of Superman who stayed in the core of the sun for thousands or tens of thousands of years, and then became the fifth-dimensional Superman of pure gold, and resurrected his dead lover Alice. Since he can do it, why can't he? The fifth dimension? This is also a good way. Even if it doesn't work, I still need enough strength. Whether it is going to the OUA star, or going to the apocalypse star to snatch the mother box, or something else, Lu Yuan knows the importance of power. What's more, Alice's condition is gradually improving, and he feels it is necessary to stay here first. Next, he plans to stay in the core of the sun for a while, until he feels enough, or until Alice recovers. But what Lu Yuan didn't expect was that 95,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye, which was close to 100,000 years. He stayed in the core of the sun for nearly 100,000 years. 18. Nearly 100,000 years have passed, but the sun has never changed, still emitting light to illuminate the entire solar system, and it is still so scorching hot. The surface temperature of the sun is considered to be several thousand degrees Celsius, and the core can reach 20,000 degrees Celsius. That's a terrible thing. Hot water with a boiling point of 100 degrees can quickly cook meat. So what about 20,000 degrees? Even the Earth, even if it reaches this temperature for only a moment, everything in the world will be turned into ashes, and everything will be destroyed. Even the apocalypse star, which is called a living hell, can never reach this temperature even if it is said to be full of magma. Otherwise, even with the powerful physique of the new Protoss, they would not be able to survive. But at the moment, in the core of the sun, there are two people. It was Lu Yuan and Alice. Lu Yuan hugged Alice and sat cross-legged in the core. He had stayed here for 95,000 years in order to revive Alice. No one knows how he survived alone, how he endured the terrible loneliness. Even though he is sleeping most of the time, he still has to wake up often because he has to take care of Alice, and he also needs to check on Alice's condition frequently, and he doesn't want to miss the first moment when Alice wakes up. But to his disappointment, Alice's damaged life structure was healed as early as the first day they came to the sun's core, but until now, she has not opened her eyes again. The only thing that comforted Lu Yuan was that Alice's physical condition had already changed, which made her not rotten even after so many years. Otherwise, Lu Yuan should have acted long ago. Alice's cells have been strengthened to a terrible level. Although she has no signs of resurrection, her body has already surpassed the ordinary body of steel. Even if Superman is born, she is by no means her opponent. If Alice was so powerful back then, how could she have died? At this time, Lu Yuan slowly opened his eyes. It has been 100 years since he woke up last time. Over the years, he went from waking up every few days at first, to months, then years. As the disappointment grew, the time he fell asleep each time became longer, until it turned into waking up every 100 years. It was too difficult for him to accept the reality that Alice could never wake up, and he would rather escape in a deep sleep. When he opened his eyes, a golden light suddenly lit up in his eyes. It wasn't heat ray, but the moment he opened his eyes, the force generated caused a strong wind, and the opposite rock wall roared, and a large area was cut off. Rock. This was only caused when Lu Yuan opened his eyes unconsciously. The moment Lu Yuan has also undergone tremendous changes. Compared to that year, he has become much stronger, and it is impossible to predict how much he has strengthened compared to that year. Including Lu Yuan's appearance has also changed, only to see that his terrifying body has been stained with a layer of gold since I don't know when. That's right, Lu Yuan has turned into a huge pure golden monster, and he has become the pure golden Doomsday. Like, already, enough? Because Lu Yuan didn't speak for too long, he said to himself word by word, I should have reached the fifth dimension, right? It turned out that after so many years of living in the core of the sun, he was finally going to reach the fifth dimension. The evidence is that he has been dyed gold all over his body. Remember that version of Jean Chao is not in this state? If his memory is correct, that Jean Chao has stayed in the core of the sun for 85,000 years at most. and he stayed for an extra 10,000 years. Perhaps in his deep sleep, he has already become a higher dimensional existence without knowing it. Then, Lu Yuan stood up slowly, and as he got up, the entire sun was shaking. In this regard, Kryptonians and all Kryptonian products are too much. Obviously, their power comes from the sun's rays, but they can quickly surpass the realm where the sun exists. For example, Lu Yuan now, if he has really reached the fifth dimension, then he can even need the sun at will, or even the entire solar system, or even the entire universe. He can also create whatever he wants, alter reality law at will, even rewrite history and the future, travel through time at will, and go to any multi-universe at will. But now, Lu Yuan only has Alice in his arms and his eyes. Alice still closed her eyes quietly, and her breathing had stopped for nearly 100,000 years, and her body was gradually dyed a layer of gold, echoing Lu Yuan. I have but one wish, wake up, my beloved Alice, wake up, my wife, Lu Yuan said in a deep voice, and slowly lowered his head, leaving a mark on Alice's forehead. Suddenly, a dazzling, incomparably shining light burst out from the bodies of the two of them. A terrifying breath burst out, and in Lu Yuan's embrace, Alice finally slowly opened her eyes. Lu Yuan? After nearly 100,000 years, Alice called out Lu Yuan's name again. Lu Yuan was so excited that he almost shed tears. Why are you gilded? Are you trying to turn yourself into a statuette? Alice was surprised to find that Lu Yuan in front of her suddenly turned into pure gold. To her, it seemed that it was just a nap, but to Lu Yuan, the two had been separated by nearly 100,000 years, a full 100,000 years. If it weren't for this incident, they would have a lot of children. Thinking of this, Lu Yuan couldn't help kissing her. Alice was startled a little at first, then calmed down immediately and put her arms around Lu Yuan's neck. Difficult to handle. As a result, she was also stabbed by a bone spur on Lu Yuan's body. This is bad luck. Lu Yuan frowned. How dare he hurt Alice? He decisively removed all the bone spurs from his body, and even his huge body began to shrink, slowly becoming a height of 1.8 meters. Even his appearance has become completely normal, exactly what he used to be. Alice's eyes brightened. So you can change back? In fact, this is not the ability of Doomsday, let alone the ability of the Kryptonians, but the ability of Lu Yuan after becoming the fifth dimension. Since people in the fifth dimension can alter reality law at will, it is no problem to change their appearance a little bit. In this way, Lu Yuan returned to the appearance of an ordinary person and couldn't bear it anymore. Here, he held a simple wedding with Alice, mainly for the bridal chamber. 100,000 years, he guarded Alice without touching her for 100,000 years, but when she finally came back to life, Lu Yuan couldn't bear it anymore, and they parted for 100,000 years. Alice didn't have any objections and accepted everything from Lu Yuan obediently. The whole sun is shaking, as if blessing them, but the shaking of the sun is passive. And the gods of Olympus on earth are puzzled by this phenomenon. What's wrong? In particular, humans 5,000 years ago recorded this phenomenon. 19. Signs appearing on the sun must inevitably attract attention on Earth. The Earth now is very different from 95,000 years ago. When Lu Yuan first came, the Earth was still in a primitive state. But in just a few tens of thousands of years, earth-shaking changes have taken place on the Earth. Not only have human beings proliferated, but they have also entered a civilized society, especially the Greek gods living on Mount Olympus. On this day, Zeus was coming out of a lover's house and was worrying about how to avoid the interrogation of the Queen Hera. Suddenly, he noticed a change in the sun. The sun, which should belong to the absolute core of the solar system, should never have a trajectory deviation, and the sun, which revolves around the Milky Way at a slow speed, seems to be shaking now. Why is this happening? Knowing the seriousness of the situation, Zeus hurried home, ignoring Hera's suspicion, and hastily held a meeting of the 12 main gods. Everyone, have you noticed the vision of the sun? But why did this happen? Zeus faced the other 12 main gods. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay and couldn't help turning to one of them. Apollo, the god of light, also replaced the former Helios and became the new sun god during these tens of thousands of years. The original sun god was Helios, but the son of Helios once secretly drove Helios' void carriage and caused a catastrophe. Zeus not only judged his son, but also deprived him of the title of the sun god, and gave it to his son. Apollo is the son of Zeus and Leto, another lover, and Artemis, the goddess of hunting, is the twin sister of Apollo. Some say that Artemis belongs to her older sister, while others say she belongs to her younger sister. In short, She and Apollo are siblings or brothers and sisters, and at the same time, both of them are the 12 main gods. Now that Apollo has become the new sun god, ruler of the sun, he obviously has something to say. Apollo first fell into deep thought, and then tentatively said, I remember that Helios once recorded such a record. Nearly 100,000 years ago, an alien titan brought his dead wife close to the sun. After some serious negotiations, he allowed the titan to bury his wife in the sun, and the titan was never seen again. So, Apollo, do you want to say that the titan is going to come back? Artemis asked. Apollo nodded. The only thing I can think of is this. The gods were also meditating on Apollo's opinion. No matter what, the mutation of the sun cannot be ignored. No one knows the importance of the sun better than us. Even if the sun falls into a cold period, it is enough to bring unpredictable disasters to the earth. Humans can't help us. We can only protect human beings. But even we can't get close to the sun. What should we do? I know that one person can help us, Hermes, one of the 12 main gods, suddenly stepped forward. He is also a child of Zeus. And likewise, he is not the child of Zeus and Hera. The queen of heaven, Hera, is Zeus' wife, but many of Zeus's children were born to him and his lover. The 12 main gods, except Zeus, Hera, and Poseidon, are mostly gods of the next generation, and even, almost all of them are children of Zeus. Not to mention Apollo and Artemis, but also Hermes, the god of fire, Hephaestus, the god of fire, is finally the child of Zeus and Hera, and Aphrodite, the god of love, is also said to be the son of Zeus and another lover child. Definitely can't forget that there are also Ares, the god of war, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom. There are a total of 12 main gods, 7 of which are the children of Zeus, and 2 positions are occupied by him and the queen Hera, which is outrageous. Someone asked Hermes, "Who are you talking about?" Hermes was also unambiguous. You all know that I can fly freely, and the fastest speed can reach the speed of light. So when I was playing in outer space, I met a green guy who called himself Asgardian. He said that the universe fan we are in is different because he is in charge. It turned out to be Green Lantern. I have dealt with him before. Zeus was well informed. Obviously, he had met Green Lantern. Hermes continued. I became friends with him, and he has some magical powers. Maybe he can help us investigate. If it's Green Lantern, they do know some things we don't know, and many convenient abilities. Hermes, I will leave this matter to you. Zeus made a decision on the spot. Hermes agreed and acted on the spot. He didn't lie. He did have the speed of light, and he left the Earth's atmosphere almost instantly, and then came out of the solar system across the universe and saw the more vast and boundless Milky Way. But Hermes was worried again. The universe is so big. Where would he go to find the whereabouts of that green friend? In the end, before he could look for it, a green light and shadow approached him from a distance. My friend, long time no see. A humanoid with an appearance that is obviously different from that of humans, and a green lantern wearing ancient armor, just appeared in front of Hermes. Hermes breathed a sigh of relief. Urango, you have finally appeared, and I have something to go to you. Green Lantern named Urango was taken aback and said, I also have something to say. Don't you already know? A group of terrible enemies are coming to the Earth from the distant universe. Enemy? Urango nodded. Yes, that is the warning sent to me by OA Star. That enemy is terrible. They have conquered at least 100,000 worlds before that, and now they are targeting the Earth. Urango was taken aback, and quickly pulled Urango to fly to the Earth. Come back with me and explain to Zeus. When Green Lantern Urango came to Earth's Mount Olympus and explained the situation to the ancient Greek gods, no one paid attention to the sun anymore. A big war could break out at any time, and now who cares about so much? Mr. Urango, what is the origin of the group of enemies you mentioned? Athena, the goddess of wisdom, asked. Urango thought for a while, and said the information and intelligence he knew. Since the second world of the old gods was destroyed in the disputes between your old gods, the fourth world was born, and the new gods were born accordingly. Now we have to the coming enemy is a new Protoss led by a terrible Dark Lord called Darkseid. It is said that no blade of grass grows wherever they pass, and all the world conquered by them will be turned into a sea of flames. Any life will submit to him and be turned into an immortal monster. Follow his orders and continue to fight for him. A goal. That is Darkseid. 20. With the arrival of Urango, he brought a very important piece of information. Today, 100,000 years later, Darkseid once again led the army to start a new journey, and his goal this time is the Earth. The Earth at the moment is still in the ancient times, at least 5,000 years away from the modern industrial age. In other words, it can also be considered that the Earth in this era is not only in a near-primitive state, but without those high-tech products. Those well-known superheroes have not debuted at all. Correspondingly, this era is called the Age of the Gods, because the gods and humans live in the same world, and at the moment is the gods of Greek mythology who dominate the Earth. Under the auspices of Zeus, the Earth began to prepare for the enemy. On the other side, at the moment was at the core of the sun, and Alice at the moment, who had finally recovered, was lazily nestling on Lu Yuan's body. So many things happened. Alice squinted her eyes, listening to Lu Yuan's story. Lu Yuan told all the things she missed. Although he didn't talk about the hardship and loneliness of the past 100,000 years, Alice could understand how much effort he had made to resurrect himself. I was moved in my heart, but there was not even a word of thanks on my lips. There is no need to say thank you between them. And then? Are you really angry at the whole Krypton because of me? Don't you even plan to go back and have a look? Alice raised her head and looked at Lu Yuan with a smile. Lu Yuan snorted softly. It's kind enough that I didn't kill them. Why are you so cute? Alice held Lu Yuan's cheek in her hand and kissed. The home planet you used to protect at all costs turned against me because of me. What? Am I more important than your life? Didn't Lu Yuan turn against the mother planet that he sacrificed his life to protect for Alice? What does this mean? Lu Yuan regards her as more important than his own life and Krypton. Women are emotional beings, and this works better than sweet talk. The main thing is that this is not sweet talk, and Lu Yuan really did that. He had destroyed all the military forces on Krypton, and those guys had been his and Alice's subordinates. But so what? They hurt Alice. Lu Yuan will never forgive. But after you do that, what will happen to Krypton? Alice worried again. Krypton is not safe, and there is a neighbor watching over it. Moreover, there are secrets in the universe that Krypton has not yet mastered. Especially after seeing the power of Darkseid and the new Protoss. She was worried about the state of Krypton, but Lu Yuan didn't take it seriously at all. If it is destroyed, it will be destroyed. Anyway, it will be destroyed sooner or later. What? Alice didn't hear clearly. Lu Yuan shook his head, unwilling to say more, raised his hand and gently patted Alice's back, and instantly covered her with a pure white dress with a pure golden energy. The blonde-haired and blue-eyed Alice, paired with a white dress, immediately became pure and beautiful, like a pure saint. Though she lost her purity not so long ago, she and Lu Yuan are finally married. What do you think was the reason for the frequent vibrations of the sun before? Wow, what is this? Alice exclaimed, curious about Lu Yuan's method. Lu Yuan shook his head and said to Alice, "It's nothing. In fact, you already have the same power." Alice and Lu Yuan also stayed in the core of the sun for nearly 100,000 years. In fact, Alice has also absorbed enough power to become a fifth-dimensional creature. It's just that she doesn't know it yet. So the legend you mentioned to me is true? Alice stood up, looked down at her hands clenched into fists, and only felt that she was full of strength now. At the moment, she no longer needs Lu Yuan's biological standpoint to protect herself. She can survive in the core of the sun without any harm. Lu Yuan Al once mentioned the Al family's secret code to Alice. He said that the light of the yellow sun can be the power of Kryptonians. The two quietly made a decision, and they will go to look for a yellow sun to try it out. Maybe that would increase the power of Krypton overall. As a result, it also became a flag, and it was split up by the two families working together not long after. At this time, the two families agreed. That's right, the yellow light of this sun can greatly increase our strength, and our upper limit has no limit. That is to say, it can be improved without limit. It's just that when our strength is strong enough, the increased strength will also begin to increase. Getting smaller, Lu Yuan showed a thoughtful expression. As they become stronger and stronger, there is no obvious improvement now. It's not that their potential has reached its limit, but the power of the Ascension now seems insignificant compared to their overall power. Maybe we can go to the universe to find a fixed star with brighter light and higher temperature. Lu Yuan is thinking about these. Alice didn't care. She rolled her eyes and jumped up with her feet lightly touching the ground. But immediately, she fell down again. Alice, who fell down, sat there, although she didn't hurt, but her face showed distress. Lu Yuan was startled and rushed over to pick up Alice. Alice stared at Lu Yuan dumbfounded. Isn't it? I'm also made of steel now, so I'm not so fragile. Perhaps it was because of a loss once. Lu Yuan was extra cautious. Even though he knew that Alice was in the same realm as himself now, both of them were already in the fifth dimension. Even if they wanted to die, they would not die easily. But he still patted the place where Alice fell. Alice felt dumbfounded. and asked curiously, "By the way, how did you do it? Why can't I fly?" Lu Yuan sighed softly. "After all, this is the core of the sun, and the huge amounts of gravity are enough to make the entire galaxy revolve around it. You are still a beginner, and it is too difficult to master flight's ability here. Needless to say about the gravity of the sun, Alice has not mastered the gravity of breaking away from the ordinary planet. So she wants to run before she can walk. How can it be so easy? But I have a good place. There is a planet nearby, and there are other life forms on it, and the gravity is not too strong. Let me teach you flight's ability, heat ray, and other powers we have mastered." Lu Yuan decided that the planet he was talking about was the Earth, and he wanted to take Alice to train. He wants to teach Alice all the means and abilities possessed by Superman, including the power that belongs to the fifth dimension that he has explored alone during these years. "That's it for you?" Alice was good at tapping Lu Yuan's chest. He only changed a dress for Alice, but ignored himself. Lu Yuan smiled nonchalantly, raised his hand and snapped his fingers. A dazzling pure golden energy descended from the sky, enveloping Lu Yuan. After the light had dissipated, he had already changed into a pure white suit, corresponding to Alice, a proper couple outfit. 21. Now that the next action has been decided, Lu Yuan and Alice are not hesitation people, so they immediately acted. It's just that Alice hasn't mastered her own power yet. She still needs to let Lu Yuan hold her and fly her. I saw two white figures embracing each other and flying out from the core of the sun. 100,000 years ago, Lu Yuan was able to set foot on the surface and core of the sun without any problems. 100,000 years later, at the moment, he was able to ignore the power of the sun and the terrible gravity of the sun. Just like that, Lu Yuan hugged Alice and easily flew out from the surface of the sun. But when they were far enough away from the sun, Alice suddenly shivered.
It's cold.
Staying in the core of the sun for a whole 100,000 years, in an environment of 20,000 degrees Celsius, Alice has already adapted to that temperature. Suddenly entering the icy cosmic space, she was still a little uncomfortable. Lu Yuan didn't feel anything, because his main body was Doomsday after all. Unlike ordinary Kryptonians and Superman, he could adapt to any environment. Lu Yuan was about to activate his biological stance to protect Alice, but the latter adapted immediately and was attracted by the beauty of the bustling Milky Way starry sky. What a beautiful starry sky! Alice looked into the distance and inadvertently triggered the ability of super farsightedness. Among Superman's various abilities, there are several kinds of light pupil techniques. In addition to the most classic heat ray, there are X-perspective, microscopic vision, and super farsightedness. When it is at its most powerful, Superman's vision can focus on any corner of the universe at any time. Microscopic vision can even observe the microscopic world, and the function of definitely X-perspective is the same as that of X-rays. In addition, Superman has many kinds of abilities, and it is up to Lu Yuan to guide Alice bit by bit. Lu Yuan also deliberately slowed down the speed so that Alice could enjoy herself. However, the distance from the sun to the Earth, if calculated according to the speed of light, is only 8 minutes of light years. A light year is defined as a length distance, defined by traveling at the speed of light for 1 year. The distance from the sun to the Earth is 8 minutes in a light year. For ordinary people, this is definitely unimaginable. But Lu Yuan came to the Earth easily from the sun. When Alice saw the beautiful blue planet, she couldn't help exclaiming again, "It's so beautiful." Now she is like a young girl who has not experienced much in the world. She is surprised when she sees everything. But yes, Alice has been asleep for 100,000 years, unlike Lu Yuan who wakes up often. For her, these 100,000 years are just a dream, leaving no mark or vicissitudes at all. Instead, it was Lu Yuan, who just smiled and let Alice yell and scream, like an old grandpa. Alice stared at Lu Yuan dissatisfied. "Are you kidding me? How come? I just feel that you finally showed your true nature," Lu Yuan joked with a smile. Alice was a little shy. In fact, she was still very lively before. It is better to say that she seemed a bit aggressive to others. But after becoming a general, she began to restrain her nature and become mature and stable. However, only when she is with Lu Yuan, she will often show her original side. As for now, she unreservedly showed her true face. At the moment, the two former supreme commanders and generals of Krypton have now abandoned the heavy burden and finally got rid of their respective families. Now they can live the life they want freely. Lu Yuan easily broke through the Earth's atmosphere and then came to the Earth's surface quietly. Today's Earth is still in ancient times. Although a civilized society has developed, it is obviously still in its initial stage. This is the age of mythology. Those legendary gods are real in this era. It's just that Lu Yuan and Alice didn't care about it, and they didn't provoke them, but came to a virgin forest. What a nice place. Alice closed her eyes and took a deep breath of fresh air. But immediately she let out a dry cough. The oxygen in this air is too sufficient. Cough, cough, cough. Even Lu Yuan was affected. He frowned slightly, only to feel that there were many voices in his ears for no reason. The sound of wind, water, and even human voices far away, not to mention the sounds of animals in the forest, even the sound of ants, bees, and the movement of animals biting and barking. Lu Yuan and Alice, their five senses are changing. At first it was only vision, and now hearing, smell, etc. are also beginning to strengthen. When the two Kryptonians came to Earth, they finally began to become Superman step by step. This is the way they must go. If it is an ordinary Kryptonian, it must be difficult to accept it now. But they are not ordinary people. They have stayed in the core of the sun for 100,000 years, and the accumulated power is enough to make them the fifth dimension. So the two quickly adapted and mastered how to turn off the extra senses. I was really shocked. Alice covered her ears. At that moment, she even received the voices in the universe. Lu Yuan also had lingering fears. Such a huge amount of information stuffed in all at once would definitely drive people crazy. Fortunately, they got used to it. Shaking his head, Lu Yuan waved to Alice. Let me teach you the flight skills first. Alice's eyes lit up. She was most envious of this. It's just that Lu Yuan flew by instinct at the beginning, and now that he is to be Alice's teacher, his advice is not very reliable. But it doesn't matter. The two have enough time to try slowly. Since they can stay in the core of the sun for 100,000 years, in fact, they don't know when they will start. They will not grow old, let alone reach the end of their lifespan due to time. In fact, they are now able to manipulate time. They are already immortal. The premise is not to encounter two powerful enemies now. In this way, the two settled down in this primeval forest away from human habitation. They also tried to start to master the power as the fifth dimension and built a house with alter reality ability. During the day, they played around in the forest while trying out various abilities. During this process, Alice finally mastered the ability of flight, and also began to learn various powers belonging to Kryptonians, such as heat ray, super breathing frozen air, etc. As for the night, it's definitely unspeakable that they're husband and wife and trying to create the next generation. I just don't know why. It may be because their life forms no longer belong to mortals, and it is not easy to create a crystallization of love that belongs to them. Anyway, take your time. But the two don't know that a big trouble is coming to the Earth. 22. On this day, on a certain continent of the Earth, there was a barren Grand Canyon. But for some reason, countless people gathered here. There are countless armies there, and they come from several factions. There is an army of Atlanteans who have not yet fallen, and even have advanced technology. They are fully armed, and the weapons they use are more like alien technology from outer space. It is said that the kingdom of Atlantis was once extremely developed, and even developed to the level where it could expand space. However, one day in the future, Atlantis suddenly fell, and they could only live under the sea from now on. There is also a large army of women who are warriors of the Amazon family. At the moment, the Amazons have not been betrayed, let alone enslaved by Hercules. They still believe in Zeus and the Greek gods, and therefore, part of the Greek gods walked among them. There is also the Alliance army from the human country, and the leaders headed by the Greek gods. At the forefront are the 12 main gods headed by Zeus. They are fully armed and have serious expressions on their faces, as if they are waiting for something. It has been a while since Arango brought the news. During this time, the Greek gods who received the news assembled the Earth Alliance army. This is already the strongest combat force they can gather, although it also makes people wonder what the Eastern countries were doing at that time. Maybe you don't take us to play? After all, this is a certain country. Or if the Jade Emperor is really allowed to appear on the stage, maybe all the enemies will be slapped to death with one slap. Many people actually got one thing wrong. The Lord believed by foreign countries is not God, but God. At first, there was only one title for God, and that was Hao Ian God. It was a translation for the convenience of preaching. The meaning of God in the DC world is different. It's a bit of a stretch. Back to the present. When the human beings and the armies of various races were assembled, everyone silently raised their heads to look at the sky. At some point, they could already see some inexplicable things appearing outside the sky. In fact, it is a spaceship, but except for Atlantis, the Earth has not yet mastered this level of technology. It was a fleet composed of huge mothership-class spaceships covering the sky and covering the sun, surrounded by countless small spaceships, which were fast approaching and slowly breaking into the Earth's atmosphere. The leading mothership quickly left the fleet and rushed to the surface. They had noticed the large army on the ground long ago and came here deliberately. The spaceship stopped in midair, the hatch opened, and a huge amount of body jumped up and took off and landed. Boom! The ground trembled, and what appeared in front of the Alliance army was a strong creature over 3 meters tall. He stood there calmly with his hands behind his back, fully armed, but what was strange was that there was a lump on his chest for some reason. A huge amount of depression. He is Darkseid. Nearly 100,000 years ago, he invaded Krypton, and the marks on his chest are the scars left by Lu Yuan. Until now, he could have repaired the wounds on his body long ago, but he didn't do that. He will never forget that humiliation forever, and he will seek to regain this dignity. But not now. He was preparing for revenge. Is it on this planet? That power, the anti-life equation, Darkseid muttered to himself. His eyes suddenly lit up, and 2 rays of light burst out suddenly, and quickly circled around and drew a picture on the surrounding land. Huge amounts of traces similar to magic circle. That was his totem, and it was proof that he had gained the power of the Omega effect. Finally, after 100,000 years of precipitation, Darkseid finally grew up, and he got his most classic power, Omega Ray. But this is not enough. Darkseid is still spying on a power called anti-life equation. He must be fully prepared, and then find the monster to take revenge. If Lu Yuan were here, he would definitely ask him who is the monster. At this time, the fleet in the sky followed closely behind and flew down. 3 people who looked exactly the same came down from the second spaceship. Lu Yuan would be surprised if he saw it. Isn't that the triplets he killed one of the time? Why did a team of 3 appear again? The triplets are still the main person in charge of the mother box as they were 100,000 years ago. The 3 of them walked behind Darkseid with 3 mother boxes and asked, Lord of Darkness, congratulations on finally finding the location of the anti-life equation. Can we integrate the mother box? Well, Darkseid agreed without looking back. Let's get started. What about the enemy in front of me? Someone asked. Darkseid sneered. It's just a mob. I have noticed the role of elites in the past 100,000 years, so I have brought them here. Let my dark elites show up, and at the same time pass on orders to conquer this world. Following Darkseid's order, the fleet began to move. First of all, some of the spaceships opened the hatches one after another, and then released one after another new Protoss exuding powerful aura. There were 10 of them in total, lined up far apart, and they landed in front of Darkseid one after another. They are the so-called Dark Elites in Darkseid's mouth. From left to right is Mantis, a mighty warrior in green armor. The Magical Grace, the younger sister of Godfrey, wears a magician-like robe and has a crystal staff in her hand. Glory Godfrey, the big brother of the Magical Grace, has a similar ability to his sister and is good at manipulating the will of others. Apocalypse, a powerful man who used to be Darkseid's exclusive servant, was later cultivated by Darkseid when he discovered that he had great potential. Brora, a powerful warrior whose hands and body are covered with a rock-like substance. D. Warrens, with a terrifying aura all over his body and a sneering expression on the corner of his mouth. Others include Dr. Chaos, Cantor, Mortera, and Titan. But among these people, the only one missing was the Steppenwolf. Do not know why. They are the Dark Elite formed by Darkseid, and they are also the most powerful fighters he selected from the new Protoss of the Apocalypse Star. In addition, countless groups of fighters flew out from the major motherships. Demon-like army. After experiencing a disastrous defeat with Krypton, Darkseid noticed the importance of the army, so he finally led his notorious demon-like army on the stage. Suddenly, the most terrifying enemy appeared in front of the Earth army. Darkseid is also different from 100,000 years ago. Compared to the time when he would only take the lead in charging, now he just stands there with his hands behind his back and said lightly, "Conquer them." A great battle ensues. 23. In the midst of a lush primeval forest, by the edge of a lake, there are 2 young handsome men and beautiful women who are setting up a bonfire there. They are Lu Yuan and Alice. There is still a small boat parked by the lake. They just went for a swim in the lake, and then caught a few fish by the way. They are going to use local ingredients to roast and eat. Suddenly, the 2 raised their heads at the same time. When Darkseid's army broke into Earth, they had already noticed it. The 2 looked at each other. It's them again? Alice frowned. She deeply remembered the origin of those spaceships. They were the ones who almost destroyed Krypton. Regardless of what Krypton did later, at least these spacecraft are also their enemies. But just when Alice was about to take action, Lu Yuan grabbed her hand and shook his head slowly. You have also noticed that the forces of the Earth have already taken action, and it has nothing to do with us. It turns out that he has noticed the actions of all forces on the Earth in the past few days, including the old Protoss of the Greek Protoss. There is enough power in that battlefield, and they don't need to intervene. But Alice wanted to persuade again. Lu Yuan, on the other hand, has already taken the processed fish and put it on a wooden stick to prepare for grilling. Do you really want to stand by? Alice asked Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan snorted softly. I was betrayed last time, and from then on I understand that doing good deeds may not be rewarded. The most important thing is that I lost you because of this. Compared with you, the entire universe was destroyed. You don't have to care. Alice was very moved. It turned out that he was worried about himself. At the same time, I was a little dumbfounded and reminded. But don't forget what kind of mother box they have. If the entire Earth is destroyed, we will have no place to stay, right? If the entire universe is destroyed, where can we go? Woolen cloth? This is the truth of, there are no eggs under the cover of the nest. Lu Yuan also understands this truth, but is he really going to get involved in the fight with that guy again? After Alice is resurrected, Lu Yuan actually has no reason to be an enemy of Darkseid, and he doesn't need the mother box anymore. Let's take a look first. Maybe the Earth's own power is enough to defeat Darkseid. Lu Yuan still didn't take immediate action, but had to wait and see first. Fish. Lu Yuan didn't give Alice another chance to speak. Picked up the fish and handed it over. Alice sighed. This guy even did not hesitate to use heat ray to cook the fish as fast as possible, just to cover his mouth. Really. Helpless. She could only sit aside and eat. But to be honest, because there is no seasoning, and the techniques of both of them are very general, the food tastes tasteless. Mainly because her mind was on the other side. The canyon far away has been completely reduced to a battlefield. In the sky, countless spaceships filled the entire sky, constantly attacking the ground. The Earth Allied forces did not give up too much. Atlantis took out their high-tech, and some flight vehicles that could not enter space, at the moment, took on the most important mission, and they barely competed with those more advanced spaceships. Past. On the ground, the Earth Allied forces are moving the whole body even more. Amazons. Atlantis. Kill. The large-scale coalition forces instantly entered the charge lineup, scrambling to target Darkseid's location, and the army rushed forward with great momentum. But in front of Darkseid, the 10 members of the Dark Elite were not afraid, and commanded the countless army of demons who had already stepped onto the stage, pointing forward one after another. Demon-like army. Attack. Wow. The army of demons flapped their wings and faced them. A fiend, a demon-like creature with demonic wings, and a human-like body. The individual strength of the monster is not strong. It only has the physical fitness and strength of human beings. But the demon-like is superior in its large quantity. This thing is created with the technology of the Mother Box. Whenever Darkseid conquers a planetary civilization, it will destroy the entire planetary civilization with the power of the Trinity of the Mother Box, and all life will be transformed into a monster. The demons are loyal to Darkseid and will fight endlessly for Darkseid. This stuff is still tricky. In order to test the strength of the demon army, Darkseid deliberately provoked disputes tens of thousands of years ago, allowing the Green Lantern Corps to discover the location of the Apocalypse Star. ASA result. The Asgardians in the universe led the entire Green Lantern Corps to conquer the Apocalypse Star, but after losing 2/3 of the Green Lantern, they barely reached the front of Darkseid, and finally fled back in despair. That period of history was secretly kept by the Green Lantern Corps, and no one knows it until today. This is why the Green Lantern Corps only had no information about Apocalypse and Darkseid later. It can be seen that the demon army is still very powerful. Definitely the current strength of the Earth Alliance is not bad. The Amazons, as well as the Atlanteans, can be said to be the cards of the Earth. Their physical fitness, density, and structure are far superior to ordinary people, and their lifespan is even longer. Their power is far beyond that of ordinary demons. Even if it is the human coalition of various races, the human beings in this period are far beyond the imagination of later generations. Although this era is in a wilderness, there is no doubt about physical strength alone. So when the two sides confronted each other head-on, the demon-like army collapsed in an instant. Kill. The Amazons rushed into the demon-like army like an iron arrow. Although they were women, each of them was the most valiant warrior. Every female Amazon could easily kill 3 or 5 demon-like troops. Followed by the Atlanteans, they are also powerful. They once fought with the Amazons and fought back and forth. If the Atlanteans were weak, they would have been defeated by the Amazons. Man enslaved conquered. In fact, both the Amazons and the Atlantis are believers in Greek mythology, but the Amazons originally believed in Ares, the god of war, while the Atlanteans believed in Poseidon, the god of the sea. So among their two major ethnic groups, you can still see the figures of those old Protoss, especially led by the two sisters and brothers Apollo and Artemis. Each of them has a longbow. Artemis's is a silver longbow, and Apollo's is a fiery red longbow. Under the cover of the army, the two opened their longbows one after another and shot at the enemy spaceship in the sky with the posture of bending the bow and shooting the big eagle. What is shocking is that this ancient attack method actually exploded the spacecraft in the sky. This picture is exaggerated and unbelievable. Such an ancient and primitive weapon can blow up the most advanced spaceship? But don't forget, the two of them are not Hawkeye or Green Arrow. They are old Protoss, and the weapons they use are also artifacts. Even if they are against Darkseid, they are worthwhile, and they can break their wrists if they can't beat them, let alone a mere spaceship. For a while, it seemed that the situation was tilting towards the Earth. 24. When the Earth Alliance and Darkseid's demon-like army met, a large-scale chaos broke out immediately, and the Earth Alliance has gained an advantage in the situation, the most prominent of which are the Amazon female warriors and the Atlantean army. Especially those gods of Greek mythology from Olympus, led by the 12 main gods, are causing huge amounts of damage to Darkseid's army. Definitely, the performance of the coalition forces of all human nations is also remarkable. When facing a monster whose individual strength is equivalent to the limit of human beings, they can still go up and fight. Seeing that the situation was tilting toward the Earth Alliance, Darkseid's face was ugly, which reminded him of the defeat he had suffered on Krypton. That was the first time he was thwarted since his debut. After that, Darkseid started his journey again. He deliberately bypassed the galaxy where Krypton was located and came to the Earth on the other side of the galaxy. I didn't expect that this place was also a hard stubble. How did Darkseid know that after those old Protoss destroyed the second world, the Olympus gods among them came to the Earth? You know, these old Protoss are worthy of Darkseid. If he hadn't acquired the power of the Omega effect among the 12 main gods present, at least Zeus and Ares, the god of war, would be able to defeat him. Such power was beyond his expectation. Fortunately, he wasn't completely unprepared. Dark Elite, go and get rid of those who are in the way. Darkseid couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't care about the casualties of the demon-like army, because the replenishment of the demon-like army was very simple, and the consumed quantity could be replenished at any time. Even if he conquers the Earth, he can get countless demon-like subordinates again, and he can completely support wars with wars. He cares about his face. The 10 Dark Elites were ordered to act immediately. The first is the Mantis wearing a green armor. He strode across the demon-like army and walked straight to a Greek Protoss holding a big axe. That is Ares, god of war. The power of Ares, the god of war, comes from war. No matter who caused it or what race broke out in the war, as long as it is a war, he can draw strength from it. Now he is drawing unprecedented strength from this peerless war. The most powerful coalition forces on Earth are gathered here, and what they are fighting against is a terrifying enemy who has conquered countless worlds and civilizations. One can imagine what kind of power is conveyed in this war. But this also made the Mantis find him. I can feel that you are the strongest among these people, and I am also the strongest fighter under Darkseid's command. If I kill you, I can explain to Darkseid, Mantis said. This is not because he is boasting. In fact, the power of the Mantis is indeed second only to Darkseid. Even if he stands with other Dark Elites, he is definitely the most powerful. So he took the lead in finding Ares, the god of war who also exuded a terrifying aura. Ares didn't talk nonsense with the praying Mantis and directly swung his big axe and slashed at it. However, the Mantis just raised its hand and blocked it with the green armor easily. No, or it's not the armor's defensive power. In fact, with the strength of the Mantis, he claims to be immune to almost all physical attacks and can also absorb anyone's energy and magic attacks. This is his strongest support. God of War Ares was stunned for a moment, and in a trance, he felt a blur in front of his eyes, and a green light and shadow hit him. It was a whip leg of a praying Mantis, which hit Ares, God of War. Even Ares, God of War, was sent flying by this kick, knocking down a large group of Amazon female warriors behind him. Seeing this scene, some female warriors waved their swords and rushed up without thinking, surrounding the Mantis to pierce him. But not even Ares' tomahawk can hurt the mantis, let alone them. Instead, Mantis waved his hand impatiently.
Puff puff.
A group of human heads flew up, and the mantis cut off more than a dozen female Amazon warriors, one after another with a knife in his hand. After all, his title or name is Mantis, and this hand knife fits his nickname very well. During this period, the Amazon was still a believer in Ares, so he naturally would not just sit idly by, get up and rush over again, fighting with the praying mantis. At the same time, on the other side, the king of Olympus and the king of god of Greek mythology, Zeus, at the moment, is sending out bursts of dazzling blue lightning from his hands, and every time he can easily blow a piece of the flake-like monsters were smashed into ashes. He is both the lord of the sky and the god of thunder, and he is thunder originally, but just when he was about to strike another piece of thunder, a terrifying wave of energy stood in front of him and easily blocked Zeus's power. A man in a dark robe appeared in the eyes of Zeus. He is the doctor of chaos among the Dark Elite. The Dark Elite under Darkseid not only have fighters as powerful as praying mantises, but also include existences like magicians, and Dr. Chaos is one of them. He found Zeus and radiated a terrifying energy to block Zeus's attack, then modified the form of that energy, turning it into a terrifying flame and burning it towards Zeus quickly. Behind Zeus was a large group of soldiers from the Human Alliance, but this sea of flames was so terrifying. Once Dr. Chaos succeeded, how many people would die? At the critical moment, the king of Atlantis stood up, holding a gleaming golden trident, and shouted, "Poseidon, the god of the sea, give me strength."
Buzz.
A wave of energy suddenly erupted from the trident, forming a blue tide in midair. It was the seawater summoned by the king of Atlantis with his own power. It collided head-on with the sea of flames of Dr. Chaos and canceled each other out. But on the other side of the battlefield, Poseidon was in trouble. From the space behind him, a terrifying figure suddenly appeared, with a cold expression, holding a terrifying sharp dagger in his hand, stabbing into Poseidon's body from the back of the knife. Poseidon let out a muffled grunt involuntarily, and threw his Aquaman trident over with his hand back. However, the opponent just raised his hand and blocked it, and swiped with a dagger in his hand.
Puff.
Poseidon's lower back was cut through a huge amount of terrible gash. Cantor, a member of the Dark Elite, is also an assassin and a fighting master who claims to be proficient in all fighting martial arts in the universe. Although he is not number one, his strength will never be weaker than that of the mantis. Even as an assassin, he is more terrifying than the threat of the mantis. It is said that once Cantor targets him, he will be caught up and killed even if he escapes to Cape Tenya. This is an extremely terrifying killer assassin, and it is also the first to show results since the actions of the Dark Elites. 25. Cantor is an assassin. Although he is originally a master of martial arts that cannot be underestimated, his fighting style is different from ordinary fighters. He focuses on assassination. So when he aimed at Poseidon, the god of the sea, the latter suffered a tragedy. Poseidon is also one of the 12 main gods and the brother of Zeus. In fact, Zeus is the youngest of the 3 brothers, Poseidon is the second brother, and Hades is the eldest brother. His strength is beyond doubt. However, even Poseidon was caught off guard and was hit hard. If it were an ordinary person who was dead, even the old Protoss would be injured. After all, Cantor is also a new Protoss. Fighting God with God can kill Death God. At the same time, the other 12 main gods were also being targeted by the Dark Elites one by one. Apollo and Artemis were blocked by the magical Grace and the glorious Godfrey. After the 2 men and 2 women looked at each other, they immediately began to confront each other. Whizzing! 2 sharp arrows, 1 gold and 1 silver, were fired by Apollo and Artemis at the opposite enemy. It's hard to dodge at such a close distance. However, the miraculous Grace and the glorious Godfrey brothers and sisters are not ordinary people. It is not unreasonable for them to be selected by Darkseid. The 2 brothers and sisters raise their hands at the same time and stop the flying arrows in front of them. It turns out that they are masters of manipulation. In addition to manipulating the will of others, they can also control substances with psychokinesis. Like at the moment, they bound their arrows with powerful psychokinesis. Immediately afterwards, their eyes radiated a mysterious light, trying to capture the opposite sibling. The other 12 main gods also noticed the situation here. Without thinking about it, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, rushed over heroically with a shield in her left hand and a spear in her right hand. However, a big man suddenly jumped out of the road, holding a scepter in his hand, and swung it fiercely at Athena. Boom! Athena had already used a shield to parry, but was still thrown far away. That's a Titan from the Dark Elite. He's a Green Titan, but he's not a Green Titan Hulk from Marvel. He's just a Titan who just happens to have green skin. So he is also a member of the New Protoss, and his power comes from the New Protoss and the Apocalypse Star, not gamma rays. At the same time, the scepter in his hand is not an ordinary scepter, but a scorching scepter with extraordinary power. Roar. After knocking Athena into the air, the Titan let out a roar, as if celebrating. Hey, big guy, don't insult Green's willpower. Suddenly, a green light and shadow flew from a distance. It was Green Lantern Urango. Green Lantern's power comes from Green's will, but Titan's whole body is green, which makes him very unhappy. When flying in front of the Titan, Urango turned into a sledgehammer with the power of the green light ring and smashed it down fiercely. I have to say that the power of Green Lantern is sometimes hard to tell. When they form an army to go out together, they often rain green lights. As mentioned earlier, when Green Lantern dies, the Green Lantern ring will find its next owner. A rain of green lights means that a large number of Green Lanterns will die. The green light is no more than 5, and after 5, the regiment will be wiped out. This is what is said. And when Green Lantern fights alone, they might even be able to take on Darkseid. This fluctuation in combat power is too great. At the moment, there was only Green Lantern Urango on this battlefield, and his combat power buff was blessed to the limit, and he almost smashed the Titan into the ground with a hammer. However, after all, Titan is a new Protoss, and was selected as the leader of the Dark Elite. Darkseid only selected 10 people, which shows that they are the top existence among countless new Protoss. The Titan let out a roar, and the front of the scepter in his hand began to emit light. Suddenly, he swung the scepter to emit scorching light. Urango felt the crisis. Even if he defended with the power of the green light ring, he might be injured. At the critical moment, Athena rushed back from a distance. She quickly shuttled across the battlefield, like a phantom, and then slammed into Titan's body with the shield in her hand. Titan's scorching light deviated from the aim, and his whole body was knocked flying. Athena curled her lips and waved the shield at Urango again. Thank you just now. After finishing speaking, she aimed at the direction where the Titan flew out, kicked her feet on the ground fiercely, and a deep hole was immediately stepped on the ground by her, while Athena chased after it. Athena is the younger sister of Ares, and even once had the title of Goddess of Wisdom and War, and even the Goddess of Victory, so when she was in Olympus, she was an incomparably beautiful and obedient girl, but on the battlefield, she had such a heroic side. Urango shook his head. It seemed that he didn't need to help anymore. Then Urango turned to look away. In fact, not all the 12 main gods of Olympus came. For example, Hera, the goddess of agriculture, Demeter, and Hestia, the goddess of the stove, were not suitable for fighting. Instead, Hades, the king of the underworld, also came to the battlefield. The earth is mine, Hades yelled angrily, holding a long sword exuding darkness and death in his hand, and riding a hell 3-headed dog with 3 heads under his seat. He seems to be originally a symbol of death, and all the demons who approach him will die instantly. Seeing that Hades was about to launch a charge aiming at Darkseid in the distance, another Dark Elite blocked his way. His name is Motera, and it is said that his left hand can put people to sleep, and his right hand can make people die. He is also the embodiment of death. Motera has a similar appearance to ordinary people, with a pitiful and ruthless expression on his face. He raised his eyelids and glanced at Hades lightly, raised his hands to trigger 2 terrifying forces, and waved towards Hades. Hades also sensed the danger, and hurriedly raised the long sword in his hand and pointed at the enemy. The dead energy of the 2 collided together, and silently began to cancel each other out. However, Motera still has another hand. What to do with the breath that can make people fall asleep? But don't forget that the 3-headed dog under Hades' seat is not an ordinary mount. The hell 3-headed dog named Cerberus, seeing that Hades was about to be in danger, 3 huge amounts of heads opened their bloody mouths one after another, staring at Motera with bright red vicious eyes, and sprayed out terrible green venom. Those venoms can even corrode energy, offsetting a major threat for Hades. Good boy. Hades patted the big head in the middle with the other hand, and then shouted, "Follow me and kill that be asterisk 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 D." With a deafening roar, Cerberus charged Hades forward. For a while, Hades and Motera also scuffled together. The scale of this battle is really too huge.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.